Welcome, dear subscribers and curious listeners of my channel. Every year, millions of people re-watch the Harry Potter films, yet never get around to reading the books. And that's a shame. Yes, the movies do a wonderful job capturing the atmosphere, characters, and overall story, but they simply don't have enough time to explore the crucial details that, in the books, explain the characters' logic, motivations, and even entire plot twists. Today, we'll go over most important moments you simply won't understand unless you've read the books. Enjoy the video. Number 1. The Prophecy, Order of the Phoenix. In Order of the Phoenix, we get a vague sense that there's a prophecy predicting a clash between Harry and Voldemort, but in the book, its meaning is far deeper and more tragic. It's because of this prophecy that the Dark Lord attacked the Potters in the first place. He chose Harry, but though it could have been Neville, and by doing so he fulfilled the prophecy himself, the one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord. From that moment on, a connection formed between them. More disturbingly, the books reveal a horrifying twist. Part of Voldemort's soul transferred into Harry. He became an unintentional Horcrux. This secret is never fully revealed in the films. Number 2, Barty Crouch Jr.'s escape, Goblet of Fire. In the film, we're simply told Barty Crouch Jr. somehow escaped Azkaban and impersonated Mad-Eye Moody. But how? Why didn't anyone notice? Where had he been all that time? The book explains everything in detail. His dying mother switched places with him using Polyjuice Potion. Barty lived under the Imperious Curse, hidden beneath an invisibility cloak, watched over by the house elf Winky. When Bertha Jorkins stumbled upon the truth, her memory was erased, but Voldemort later restored it, learned everything, and came for the Crouches. In the end, Crouch Sr. was placed under the Imperious Curse, and Barty became Voldemort's tool for resurrection. This grim, intricate storyline was completely cut from the film. Number 3, Peter Pettigrew's betrayal, Prisoner of Azkaban. The third movie is a fan favorite, but it's also where major departures from the books begin. In the film, we're briefly told that Peter betrayed the Potters, Sirius suffered for it, and Harry is angry. But in the book, it's much deeper. Sirius deliberately made Pettigrew the secret keeper, believing that no one would suspect the weak and overlooked Peter. He wanted to throw Voldemort off the scent, but ended up delivering James and Lily to their deaths. This heartbreaking twist shows how even the closest friends can misjudge each other, and how cowardice can cost lives. Number 4, Priori Incantatem, Goblet of Fire. The graveyard scene where Harry and Voldemort's wands connect looks magical, but confusing. Dumbledore mutters a strange phrase, and that's it. But this moment is vital. Priori Incantatem is a rare magical effect that happens when two wands with the same core are forced to duel. Harry and Voldemort's wands both contain feathers from the same phoenix, Fawkes. When they clash, Voldemort's most recent spells are revealed, the echoes of those he murdered. This moment gave Harry a ghostly, miraculous chance to escape. In the book, it's haunting and powerful. In the film, it's never truly explained. Number 5. Lucius Malfoy's plot, Chamber of Secrets. Have you ever wondered why Lucius Malfoy gave Ginny Tom Riddle's diary? In the movie, it looks like he just knew it was dangerous and decided to toss it in. But in the book, he had a specific goal: destroy Arthur Weasley. Arthur had been gathering evidence against Lucius for possessing dark artifacts, so Lucius retaliated by planting the diary on one of Arthur's children. He hoped to cause chaos and get Arthur discredited or fired. Ginny was simply the easiest target. This paints Lucius not just as a snobbish villain, but as a cold strategist, willing to sacrifice families for political gain. Sadly, the film reduced it to a simple, he planted a diary. Number 6, why Snape joined the Death Eaters, Half-Blood Prince. Before he was the bitter potions master, Severus Snape was a lonely boy from Spinner's End, a half-blood obsessed with power. At Hogwarts, he found belonging not with kind-hearted classmates, but among those drawn to darkness. Future Death Eaters. He was brilliant, but angry. Clever, but cruel. And when he called Lily Evans a mudblood in front of a crowd, everything changed. "You disgust me," she told him. That moment cost him her friendship, the only light in his life. Afterward, he dove deeper into the shadows. Joining Voldemort wasn't just ambition, it was escape. A way to become someone feared instead of forgotten. But Snape's love for Lily never died. When he overheard the prophecy, he rushed to Voldemort, unaware that it would target her child. And when he realized the mistake, it was already too late. He begged the Dark Lord to spare her. He begged Dumbledore to protect her. She died anyway. That guilt swallowed him whole. "I have spied for you," he tells Dumbledore, "risked everything, all for Lily." The films touch the surface. The books show the wound beneath. Snape didn't just change sides, he shattered and chose to suffer in silence. Not for glory, for love. Number 7, Kreacher and the Locket, Order of the Phoenix. Kreacher is barely a shadow in the films, a muttering house elf in the background, but in the books he plays a pivotal role in 2 major storylines. First, his betrayal. Kreacher despised Sirius. To him, Sirius was a traitor to the Black family name. He secretly idolized Bellatrix Lestrange, who treated him with the cruel affection Sirius never gave. When Harry tries to contact Sirius through the fireplace in Order of the Phoenix, Kreacher lies. He tells Harry that Sirius is gone, that one word seals Sirius's fate. Kreacher lied, Dumbledore later admits. Kreacher told you what he was told to tell you. That lie sends Harry rushing to the Ministry, straight into a trap. And Sirius dies, but Kreacher also holds the key to one of Voldemort's Horcruxes. Years earlier, Sirius's brother, Regulus Black, ordered Kreacher to help him retrieve a mysterious locket from a cursed cave. Regulus dies, but Kreacher lives, carrying the fake locket home, hiding the truth for years. In Deathly Hallows, when Harry learns this, he treats Kreacher with kindness for the first time, and the result is stunning. Kreacher changes. "Master Regulus was a good man," he says with pride. Kreacher helps the trio find the real Horcrux. Without him, they'd never retrieve it. The films reduce Kreacher to a bitter footnote, but the books show something greater, the redemption of a creature no one ever cared to understand. Number 8. Percy Weasley's family conflict, Order of the Phoenix. Percy Weasley isn't just the brother with glasses and a stiff collar. In the books, he breaks away from the Weasley family entirely. When the Ministry of Magic begins its smear campaign against Harry and Dumbledore, Percy chooses loyalty to the institution over his own blood. He sends a cold letter to Ron. Stop speaking to his parents. He believes the Ministry is right, that Harry is unstable, that Voldemort hasn't returned. Molly cries. Arthur is furious. The Weasleys, usually warm and unbreakable, are torn by silence. "We were never the same after Percy left," Ginny says quietly, but the war changes everything. In the final battle, Percy bursts into the room of requirement, robes torn, breath ragged. "Hello, Minister," he shouts at Pious Thickness, levelling a hex. Then he turns to Fred and jokes. For one moment, they're brothers again. Then Fred dies. Just minutes after their reunion, Percy falls to his knees beside his twin's body, shaking with grief. It's the cost of pride. The books make this moment devastating. The films never show it at all. Without Percy's fall and return, the Weasley family story loses its most human thread, the truth that even the closest families can fracture, and that forgiveness, when it comes, is never too late. Number 9. Dumbledore's family tragedy, Deathly Hallows. In the films, Dumbledore is a wise mentor with twinkling eyes and hidden plans, but the books show a man built from guilt. At the heart of that guilt is his sister, Ariana. As a child, she was attacked by Muggle boys who saw her doing magic. The trauma broke her. She became unstable, her magic wild and uncontrollable. Their father, Percival, attacked the boys and was sent to Azkaban. Their mother, Kendra, kept Ariana hidden. But when Ariana lost control one day, Kendra died, the family shattered. Years later, Albus returned home, angry and brilliant. he met Gellert Grindelwald and they dreamed of changing the world together. But their ideas turned dark. For the greater good, they said. Aberforth tried to stop them. A fight broke out, spells flew. Ariana was caught in the crossfire. "I don't know which of us struck her," Albus admits in Deathly Hallows. "That sentence is a knife. He never found out who killed her, and he never forgave himself. From that day on, Albus Dumbledore feared his own ambition more than any curse. The films mention Ariana, they show Aberforth, but they never show this storm inside Dumbledore, why he avoided power, why he watched Harry suffer, why he chose not to act, until it was almost too late. His silence, his secrets, his sorrow, all come from that single, deadly moment. A brother's mistake, a sister's death, and a lifetime spent trying to make it mean something." Number 10. Why Harry survived the killing curse, Deathly Hallows. When Harry walks into the Forbidden Forest, he does it knowing he will die. He holds the resurrection stone in his palm, and the ghosts of his loved ones follow him in silence. Voldemort stands before him and casts the killing curse. Again, Harry falls, but he doesn't die. In the film, he wakes up in a dreamlike King's Cross and speaks with Dumbledore. That's all the explanation we get. But in the book, the truth is far deeper. Voldemort, in that moment, destroyed only the fragment of his own soul, the piece unknowingly trapped inside Harry. "You were the 7th Horcrux, Harry," Dumbledore says, "the piece of soul that Voldemort never meant to make." Back in Goblet of Fire, Voldemort used Harry's blood in the ritual that restored his body. It was a mistake. By doing so, he anchored Harry to life. Dumbledore explains it clearly in the book. His body keeps you alive. That tether lives in your blood, and your blood lives in him. Voldemort, in his desperation to conquer death, ensured that he could not truly kill Harry while he himself still lived. It's poetic justice. A man who tried to cheat death ends up saving his enemy from it. The scene in King's Cross isn't a dream, it's a crossroad. Harry could stay or return. He chooses to come back, not because he must, but because others still fight, still believe. That choice, to return without hatred, without revenge, is what separates Harry from Voldemort forever. The films show the fall and the return, but only the book reveals the cost, the sacrifice, and the twist of fate that made it all possible. Number 11. Neville's parents and his true courage, Goblet of Fire and Order of the Phoenix. Neville Longbottom enters the films as a clumsy boy with a toad and trembling hands. He forgets passwords, trips over robes, but the books tell a different story, one carved out of pain. In Order of the Phoenix, Harry visits St. Mungo's Hospital. There, he stumbles upon Neville with his grandmother. They're standing by the beds of Frank and Alice Longbottom, former Aurors, tortured into madness by Bellatrix Lestrange. "They were very brave," says Augusta Longbottom. Neville doesn't speak. He just pockets the gum wrapper his mother gave him, a gesture of love from someone who no longer knows him. That one scene changes everything. Neville's clumsiness is no longer comic relief, it's armor, a boy raised by a strict grandmother, a child visiting parents who don't recognize him. In the book, the silence between Neville and Harry in the hospital is loud. Neville doesn't ask for sympathy, he never tells anyone, and yet he shows up every day, determined to live up to the legacy his parents left behind, not for glory, for them. In the final battle at Hogwarts, it's not Harry, but Neville who kills Nagini, the last Horcrux. He pulls the sword of Gryffindor from the sorting hat and strikes, no hesitation, no fear. It takes a true Gryffindor, the book says. This moment isn't just bravery, it's triumph over everything that once made him small. It's the boy who was once overlooked, standing where heroes fall. The film shows the sword, the swing, the explosion. But without Neville's past, it's just action. In the book, it's the closing note of a long, painful song. The shy boy in oversized robes becomes the man who avenges his parents. Not with hate, but with courage. And in that moment, Neville Longbottom becomes what he always was meant to be, a quiet kind of legend. Number 12. The Deathly Hallows as a moral test. Deathly Hallows. The tale of the three brothers is shown in the film as a magical bedtime story. Three men cheat death, each claiming a powerful gift, a wand, a stone, a cloak. But that's all it seems to be in the movie, a legend, a fable. What the films miss is that this tale is the soul of the entire story. It's not just a story about magic. It's about how each person in the wizarding world, from Voldemort to Snape to Harry, chooses to face death. Voldemort craves the Elder Wand. He doesn't want to outwit death. He wants to conquer it. His obsession blinds him. He hunts down Gregorovitch, then kills Grindelwald for the wand. But the wand never truly serves him. The wand chooses the wizard, Ollivander once said. But Voldemort doesn't believe in bonds, only in power. His failure to understand the wand's loyalty becomes his downfall. He sees the Deathly Hallows as tools. He never stops to ask what they mean. Snape carries the resurrection stone, hidden inside the gaunt ring. Not to use it, not to bring anyone back. He never even touches it knowingly, but symbolically the stone fits him. He's the man who can't let go. Always, he whispers when Dumbledore asks if he still loves Lily. Snape lives with ghosts. He doesn't chase immortality like Voldemort, but he's just as haunted. His life becomes a quiet elegy to what he lost, and what can never return. Then there's Harry, the one who never wanted any of it. He accepts death, walks into the forest without resistance. In the book, he holds the resurrection stone for a moment, not to change fate, but to find the strength to meet it. His parents, Sirius, Remus, they walk with him. "You'll stay with me?" he asks. "Until the very end," his mother replies. That's the heart of it. Harry becomes the true master of death, not because he wields the Hallows, but because he chooses to let them go. Number 13, Why Harry named his son after Snape, Deathly Hallows. 19 years after the Battle of Hogwarts, the platform at King's Cross stood cloaked in thick mist, the steam from the Scarlet engines swirling around families gathered to say goodbye. It was there, in this final scene, that a subtle but deeply symbolic moment unfolded. Harry Potter, now older, gentler, and no longer burdened by prophecy, knelt beside his middle child and spoke the words that puzzled many who only watched the films. "You were named after two headmasters of Hogwarts. One of them was a Slytherin, and he was probably the bravest man I ever knew." The name, Albus Severus Potter, echoed like a spell across generations, and yet, for those who never read the books, this moment passed almost without weight, its significance buried beneath years of unwritten history and unspoken forgiveness. To understand why Harry chose the name Severus, one must journey back through the memories, the betrayals, and the eventual revelations that reshaped everything Harry thought he knew. At the start, Severus Snape had been a figure of cold contempt, his hooked nose and greasy hair shadowing his cruel remarks and open favoritism. From Harry's first potion lesson, where Snape belittled him in front of the class, to the final duel at the Astronomy Tower, where he murdered Dumbledore with an unforgiving Avada Kedavra, Snape was an enigma that bred resentment. He was, in the eyes of young Harry, a villain cloaked in robes of authority, but the truth, as always in the wizarding world, was more complex than it seemed. In the closing chapters of the Deathly Hallows, after the chaos of battle and the sting of sacrifice, Harry retrieved a vial of memories from Snape as he lay dying in the shrieking shack. With blood spilling from his throat and pain clouding his eyes, Snape handed over the essence of his soul, not to save himself, but to give Harry clarity. Within those silvery threads, revealed in Dumbledore's pensive, lay the aching heartbeat of a man who had loved Lily Evan since they were children. A boy from a broken home, Severus had found solace in Lily's kindness. He called her the one light in a dark world, and though his path turned twisted, that light never truly left him. In one haunting memory, Snape knelt before Dumbledore, whispering, "Hide them all, then. Keep them safe, please." It wasn't glory he wanted. It wasn't redemption. It was simply Lily's life. And when she died, Snape's loyalty didn't waver. It deepened into something eternal. He stayed at Hogwarts. He protected Harry not out of affection for the boy, but because the boy bore Lily's eyes. "Look at me," were his last words. A plea to see those green eyes one final time. For Harry, the revelation was shattering. He had loathed Snape, believed him to be aligned with Voldemort, and blamed him for so much loss. But in truth, Snape had been a double agent walking a razor's edge. He bore the dark mark, yet defied Voldemort. He obeyed Dumbledore's commands, even when they meant eternal shame. He killed the only man who trusted him, only to remain in the shadows, misunderstood by everyone. He was hated by Death Eaters and Order members alike, unloved, unthanked, and utterly alone. But he endured. Harry later tells his son, "You were named for 2 headmasters of Hogwarts. One of them was a Slytherin," a detail pregnant with irony. For a boy sorted into Gryffindor, raised to fear Slytherin, and often tormented by its members, choosing to name his child after the house's most enigmatic son was more than forgiveness. It was a statement. Snape had embodied the courage of a Gryffindor while wearing the robes of a Slytherin. He was cunning and secretive, yes, but also fiercely brave. There's something hauntingly noble about Snape's brand of bravery. He never wore it on his sleeve. He never sought acknowledgement. Even when he stood before Voldemort face to face with death, his betrayal was never revealed. And yet he had saved countless lives. It was Snape who warned Dumbledore of the prophecy. Snape who risked everything to inform the Order. Snape who preserved Draco's soul by killing Dumbledore himself. Snape who gave Harry the sword of Gryffindor through the frozen lake. All of it in silence. In the book, Rowling gives us a moment that is both tender and transformative. Snape's Patronus was a doe, Dumbledore observes in a whisper. "Always," says Snape. One word, a lifetime. The same Patronus as Lily's, the same unbroken devotion. That scene, which the film adapts only partially, lays bare the true depth of Snape's heart. He had never stopped loving her. And it was that love, unyielding, pure and selfless, that guided every action he took from the moment of her death to the hour of his own. Harry, having witnessed all this through the pensive, understood something profound. The heroes of his childhood, Sirius, Lupin, even Dumbledore, had all shown great courage, but none had given as much for so little as Severus Snape. The bitterness, the cruelty, the sardonic wit, these were shields for a soul in torment. And behind that mask stood a man who never stopped fighting for the memory of the woman he loved. Naming his son Albus Severus was not a matter of honouring only Dumbledore's wisdom or leadership. Albus had been flawed. He admitted to Harry that he'd raised him like a pig for slaughter. Yet he, too, had protected the world from darkness. But Severus? Severus had protected Harry with no promise of reward. He had fought Voldemort's forces while wearing their robes. He had acted as the hinge upon which the entire war turned. Without Snape, Harry would never have triumphed. Harry could have chosen other names, Sirius, Remus, even James, but those were men Harry had known personally, men who had guided him or shaped his youth. Snape was different. Snape represented something that had eluded Harry for years, the truth that people are more than their worst moments, that bravery doesn't always come in the form of bold declarations or duels in the Great Hall. Sometimes it looks like potions classes, bitter glares and relentless silence, and yet it is bravery all the same. Number 14, the Ministry Battle. What the film left out, Order of the Phoenix. The battle within the Department of Mysteries, depicted in Harry Potter, and the Order of the Phoenix stands as one of the most emotionally charged and complex moments in the entire series. The film adaptation, while visually compelling, trims down the chaotic and deeply symbolic nature of the confrontation, omitting crucial elements that J.K. Rowling carefully constructed in the book. In doing so, It loses the layered character development and harrowing intensity that made the original scene unforgettable. In the book, the battle begins not as a clash of wands, but as a descent into uncertainty. The group, Harry, Ron, Hermione, Neville, Luna, and Ginny, find themselves navigating a mysterious and shifting labyrinth of rooms in the Department of Mysteries. These rooms, each stranger than the last, are not just backdrops for action. They are symbolic thresholds, testing the students' resourcefulness, courage, and unity. One of these rooms contains a tank of brains suspended in a green liquid, which later plays a crucial role in Ron's temporary disorientation, a detail erased from the film. Ginny Weasley, often relegated to the background in the movies, is the first among the group to show decisive strength. During the chaos in the Death Chamber, she casts a Reductor Curse with such force that it shatters a section of the stone floor. The explosion is not only a mark of her magical prowess, but also her unyielding will to fight, to protect her friends, to not be overshadowed. This moment reflects her growth from a timid girl to a fierce warrior, one whose skills would later match even her brothers. Hermione Granger suffers perhaps the gravest injury among them. She is struck by a particularly cruel curse from Antonin Dolohov. In the book, this moment is chilling. Hermione crumples to the floor, barely breathing, while Harry and Neville try to drag her to safety. The spell Dolohov uses is silent, powerful, and leaves Hermione unconscious for the remainder of the fight. Her fall is not only a tactical blow, but a devastating emotional strike against the group's confidence. It underscores the real danger they are in, something the film largely glosses over. Neville Longbottom's moment comes not from triumph, but from tenacity. After his nose is broken and his wand destroyed, he continues to fight. His spells are clumsy, his speech slurred from injury, but his determination never wavers. Rowling writes, Neville was now hoarse from shouting spells with no result. He kept stumbling because of the blood pouring from his broken nose. And yet, it is Neville who stands at Harry's side as they both try to fend off their attackers in the final moments before the order arrives. This version of Neville, the one shaped by pain, trauma, and sheer will, is absent from the film, which fails to show the slow emergence of the man who would later slay Nagini. Ron Weasley's experience in the book is more surreal and dangerous than what the film depicts. After being attacked by an animated brain from the brain room, he becomes delirious, muttering nonsensical phrases as the magical tentacles wrap around him. It is a disturbing moment, one that shows how unpredictable and deeply arcane the department truly is. The book makes it clear that this is a place of experimentation and secrets, not just another battleground. The loss of that unsettling magic in the movie flattens the atmosphere, turning a place of unknown horrors into a generic fight scene. Luna Lovegood, ever the ethereal outsider, plays a vital role in maintaining the group's cohesion. She remains calm, intuitive, and quick-thinking. She helps revive Ginny and guides the others through the labyrinthine corridors. Luna's presence in the book is both grounding and mysterious. She represents the kind of wisdom that doesn't come from textbooks. Her magical skills are subtle but vital, and her unshakable faith in strange truths becomes a counterbalance to the tangible violence around them. The arrival of the Order of the Phoenix is not just a turning point in the battle, it is a revelation. Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, Nymphadora Tonks, Kingsley Shacklebolt, and Mad-Eye Moody burst into the chaos like divine intervention. Their entrance is not grandiose but fiercely efficient, and each of them faces off against Death Eaters with deadly precision. This moment emphasizes the seriousness of the conflict. This is no longer a schoolyard skirmish. These are real warriors confronting a very real war. The film reduces their presence to a background flurry, robbing the moment of its gravity and the narrative of its generational depth. It is in the duel between Bellatrix Lestrange and Sirius Black that the emotional stakes reach their peak. Their fight is intensely personal, a clash between kin, between two members of the ancient House of Black who chose opposite paths. In the book, Sirius's taunts are playful, but beneath them lies a current of pain. When Bellatrix strikes him, he falls through the veil, a mysterious and haunting structure in the Death Chamber. Rowling writes simply, "There was a terrible scream from somewhere beyond the veil. It is not an explosion. It is not cinematic. It is quiet, sudden, irreversible." The film substitutes a flash of light and dramatized shouting, but it cannot replicate the solemn horror of the original. The veil itself is a critical symbol absent in emotional weight from the film. In the book, it is described as an ancient stone arch with a tattered curtain fluttering in a breeze that no one else feels. It captivates Harry, who hears whispers from the other side. It represents the thin line between life and death, a magical construct that defies logic and brings a tangible sense of mortality into the world of spells and wands. When Sirius passes through it, the reader understands that he is not blasted away. He is gone beyond reach. The movie, unable or unwilling to explore this poetic element, misses the most haunting moment of the entire battle. Number 15. Why Dumbledore Feared Love, Half-Blood Prince, and Deathly Hallows. Albus Dumbledore was not afraid of death, nor darkness, nor the ancient forces that whispered through the forbidden forest, but he was afraid of something far more intimate, something that once shattered his life and reshaped his soul: love. Not the sanitized affection of polite society, but the raw, ungovernable hunger of love that can twist even brilliance into ruin. In The Half-Blood Prince and the Deathly Hallows, Dumbledore finally lays bare the truth he had long hidden, that love, for all its celebrated virtue, was his deepest fear. As a boy, Albus was a prodigy, the kind of genius who could have remade the magical world if he had chosen to. At 17, he was already writing papers that left his professors dumbfounded. But brilliance without direction is dangerous, and in the summer of his greatest vulnerability, after his mother Kendra's sudden death left him responsible for an unstable sister and an embittered brother, the young Dumbledore met Gellert Grindelwald. Grindelwald was not merely another brilliant youth, he was a storm, a magnetic, chaotic force from Durmstrang who spoke of freedom, of destiny, of the birthright of the magically gifted. He seduced Albus not with charm alone, but with a dream, a vision in which the strong would not hide, but lead. For the greater good. 3 words that would later echo through the bones of wizarding history like a curse. In the Deathly Hallows, Dumbledore confesses what the films only hint at. I had convinced myself perhaps that Gellert really had changed, that he was going to use his power for good, and I had fallen in love with him. It was not just ideological seduction, as it was emotional surrender. The greatest wizard of his age was brought low by longing, and when the dream turned to fire, when the fight between Albus, Aberforth, and Gellert resulted in the death of Ariana, that love turned to ash. Dumbledore never forgave himself, not for falling in love, nor for believing in utopia, but most of all, he never forgave the weakness love had introduced into his life, the longing to follow, to believe, to trust, to surrender his judgment to the one who held his heart. Ariana's death wasn't merely a family tragedy, it was a divine punishment. The gods of magic had shown him that his love could lead to death and ruin, and so he built his life around distance. This is why, when offered the post of Minister for Magic, a role he was uniquely suited for, Dumbledore declined. He feared not incompetence, but temptation. "I had proven as a very young man that power was my weakness and my temptation," he told Harry. The truth was he distrusted himself, not his logic nor his skill, but his soul, and what that soul might do when stirred by emotion. His relationship with Harry Potter reflects this fear. Dumbledore is never paternal in the ordinary sense. He is guiding, caring, but always restrained. He watches Harry suffer at the Dursleys, knowing he must. He withholds information, delays answers, and maintains a constant veil between them. In The Half-Blood Prince, this strategy begins to collapse. Dumbledore starts revealing more about the Horcruxes, about Tom Riddle, about the nature of evil. But still there is a boundary. The most revealing moment comes in the Deathly Hallows, in the ethereal white space of King's Cross Station, where Harry meets a version of Dumbledore after his own near death. Here, Dumbledore confesses the ultimate truth. Do not pity the dead, Harry, pity the living, and above all, those who live without love. These are the words of a man who understands love's absence, not as safety, but as a kind of death. And yet, even as he says them, his entire life testifies to a different choice. Dumbledore's fear of love shaped not just his private life, but his grandest strategies. He kept Harry at a distance for years, not just to protect the boy, but to protect himself. To love Harry as a son would have been to reawaken the old vulnerabilities. Dumbledore admits as much in The Half-Blood Prince, when he reveals that he delayed telling Harry about the prophecy because I cared more for your happiness than your knowing the truth. That is, he loved the boy too much to doom him too soon. And it cost him. The delay left Harry unprepared. The secrecy bred resentment. Dumbledore's fear of loving too deeply, of becoming once again the man who would make fatal choices for those he loved, ultimately led him to make other kinds of fatal choices. Choices rooted in caution rather than compassion. This fear of love even infected his death, the great plan with Snape, the cursed ring, the calculated end. Dumbledore chose a slow suicide rather than admit vulnerability. He knew Draco could not kill him, and he knew Snape would. It was a solution rooted in control. To love is to surrender control. And Dumbledore, shaped by Grindelwald's betrayal, would never again surrender. But there are glimpses, small and shining, of the man who might have been. The Dumbledore who visited the orphaned Tom Riddle and saw the potential for good, even in a broken child. The Dumbledore who trusted Hagrid, who saw promise in Lupin, who believed in Snape's redemption, all acts of a man who wanted to believe in the saving power of love, even as he distrusted it. Yet these moments were always tempered. He helped, but from afar. He mentored, but never quite embraced. Even with Snape, perhaps his most tragic partnership, Dumbledore used love as a tool. He saw Snape's anguish over Lily's death and turned it into a weapon against Voldemort. "You disgust me," Snape once said when Dumbledore revealed his full plan. And there, the great wizard stood not as a hero, but as a man who manipulated love because he feared its wildness. In the end, Dumbledore's fear is not of love's goodness, but of love's madness. He had tasted obsession. He had seen how dreams wrapped in affection could become nightmares. He feared what he might become if he loved too fully again. Not a protector, but a tyrant. Not a savior, but a ruler. It is no accident that his and Grindelwald's youthful vision included the phrase the greater good. For men who believe they are right, love becomes a justification for anything. Number 16, Hermione erasing her parents' memories, Deathly Hallows. The flicker of light in the Grangers' living room was gentle, unassuming. A summer afternoon sun slanted across the polished table, across the family photos lined in neat rows on the mantel. Hermione stood still, her wand raised, her breath shallow. This moment, barely 30 seconds in the Deathly Hallows film, is one of the most haunting and selfless acts in the entire Harry Potter series. The movie touches it briefly, silently. But the book and the heart of the girl who performed the charm reveals a depth so devastating that it redefines what it means to be brave. For Hermione Jean Granger, logic had always been her weapon, her refuge. When others panicked, she reached for books. When Voldemort returned, she reached for plans. And when the wizarding world began to crack under the weight of fear, Hermione looked ahead and saw the people she loved becoming targets. She didn't wait to be told. She didn't hope someone else would take action. She moved first. And the first move was to disappear from the lives of the two people she loved most. Her parents, Wendell and Monica Wilkins, never existed. They were an illusion, a spell, a shell. They lived in Australia, thinking they'd always lived there, thinking they never had a daughter. In truth, they were Helen and Richard Granger. Two kind, clever Muggle dentists who once kissed their daughter on the forehead and wished her luck for her 6th year at Hogwarts. They had no idea that in the days to come, they would be unknowingly sacrificed for the sake of her fight. Hermione altered their memories, rewrote their identities, and cast a charm so powerful that even she feared she might never undo it. I've also modified my parents' memories so that they're convinced they're really called Wendell and Monica Wilkins, and that their life's ambition is to move to Australia, which they have now done, she tells Harry and Ron in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. The words sit on the page like dry information, but they mask a storm underneath. Hermione, who never cast a spell without research, who worried over magical ethics in every instance, had just performed one of the darkest manipulations in wizarding memory. Not for cruelty, but to shield the ones she loved from torture, from interrogation, from death. This wasn't a casual decision, it was an execution of the deepest kind. Hermione had to look at photographs, letters, Christmas cards, all the living evidence of her existence, and make it vanish. She had to walk through her childhood home and erase it, memory by memory. Even the room where she used to read beside the window. Gone. It had to be. If the Death Eaters came, and they would come, they'd search for leverage. And nothing was more dangerous than Muggles tied to a known blood traitor. This wasn't like removing a memory and storing it in a pensieve. It wasn't temporary. It was rewriting reality. The charm she used likely involved Obliviate at its base, the same spell Gilderoy Lockhart once bragged about. But this was layered, reinforced with magical fabrication, possibly entwined with a Fidelius-like effect. It took advanced knowledge, it took emotional violence. And Hermione, age 17, did it alone. Her parents never consented. They didn't know what she was doing, that was the point. If they even suspected something was wrong, the charm might fail. So Hermione played a final, perfect performance, acting like the same daughter, smiling at breakfast, saying goodbye with warmth, and then returning silently, wand hidden, hands shaking. Her heart broke in the silence between their laughter and her spell. And then it was done. She didn't cry in front of Harry. She didn't break down in front of Ron. But in the tent, in the woods, in the lonely nights between battles, the memory of what she'd done haunted her. She was a girl at war, not just with a Dark Lord, but with the echo of her parents' voices. Voices she could no longer hear. "It's all right for you too," she says bitterly at one point. "You can go back and live with your families when this is over." The bitterness isn't envy, it's loss. It's a girl who has cut her roots and doesn't know if she'll ever grow them back. J.K. Rowling never gave us a full scene of the memory alteration in the books, but Hermione's quiet pain speaks volumes. Her fear was not irrational. Voldemort's regime was methodical. Muggleborns were hunted. Hermione herself was labelled undesirable. The Muggleborn Registration Commission, run by the possessed and corrupted Ministry of Magic, was a mockery of justice. And Hermione's parents, as Muggles and parents of a mudblood, would be interrogated at best, tortured or killed at worst. She did not just obliviate them, she created new people. Wendell and Monica Wilkins were fabricated whole. New memories, new personalities, a desire to move to Australia, and just enough time to get them on a plane before the wizarding world collapsed. Australia was not chosen at random. It was far, far away from London, from Diagon Alley, from Death Eaters. Hermione made sure they could not be traced by any magical registry or familial ties. In doing so, she erased her own safety net. Imagine the magnitude to strip yourself from the minds of the people who raised you, to burn every bridge back home and to know, truly know that if you died, they would never mourn you, because they would never remember you existed. That's the weight Hermione carried when she followed Harry into the woods, chasing Horcruxes. She carried the silence of a love she could no longer reach. The film, despite its beauty, cannot capture that devastation. It shows the act, the spell, the visual disappearance of Hermione from family portraits, but not the crushing resolve behind it, not the fact that she did it before she even left for the Burrow. not the weeks she must have spent researching advanced memory charms, not the emotional armor she had to build, layer by layer, to withstand the loss, not the whispered moments at night when she asked herself if she'd ever find them again. Even more heartbreaking is what this reveals about Hermione's maturity. She was 17, legally still a child in Muggle society, and yet she carried out an act more painful than any adult could imagine. Most people in war lose their families because the enemy takes them. Hermione removed hers preemptively because she refused to let Voldemort have that satisfaction. It wasn't self-protection, it was war strategy wrapped in sacrifice. Hermione was always about choice. She chose friendship over rules in her first year. She chose to stay by Harry's side through every danger. She chose justice in the face of bureaucracy. But this choice, this unspoken, irreversible spell, was not for glory. It was for love. And love in this case demanded the highest cost. There's a quiet moment in the tent when Harry notices her staring at the photograph of her parents. It's a fleeting detail in the book. But that image, a girl clinging to fading fragments of the life she gave up, stays with the reader far longer than any battle. Hermione didn't erase her memories of them. She held them close, guarded them like relics, but she dared not reach for them, because the moment she did, she might crack. Her faith in her own magic was not unshakable. What if the spell failed? What if someone found them? What if she never came back and they were left wandering, strangers to themselves? The what-ifs were endless, and yet she did it anyway. Because the danger was real. Because her love was real. Because, as Dumbledore once said, there will come a time when we must choose between what is easy and what is right. Hermione chose right. When the war ended, when Voldemort fell and the dust began to settle, Hermione went to find them. She reversed the charm. She gave them back their lives, their memories, their daughter, but the scar of that choice never left her. It changed her. How could it not? She was a girl who faced the abyss and turned her wand on her own happiness. She was a hero, yes, but one who paid in silence, not medals. There are no grand speeches from Hermione about this in the books, no confessionals. That's what makes it more powerful. Rowling trusted the readers to understand the weight of it, to see the girl with the wand and know that inside her burned a fire most would never see. Her brilliance was not just academic, it was moral, emotional, sacrificial. In the larger war against Voldemort, many acts of bravery shine. Harry's final walk into the forest, Snape's double life, Neville's stand at Hogwarts. But Hermione's silent spell, with the one that made her a stranger to her own parents, remains one of the most soul-wrenching, because it was quiet, because it was uncelebrated, because it was done in secret without witness and without hope of thanks. The tragedy is not that she had to do it. The tragedy is that she did it alone, that no one was there to hold her afterward, that her pain was invisible, that even fans of the films without the book might miss the truth entirely. It wasn't just a magical precaution, it was the raw edge of love. Hermione Granger is remembered as the brightest witch of her age, but let her also be remembered as the girl who rewrote the past to save the future, who vanished from a family to protect it, who bore the weight of silence so that others could live in peace. That one scene, quiet as it is, echoes louder than any spell ever cast. Number 17, why Harry never used Avada Kedavra, all parts. The green light of the killing curse haunted Harry Potter for years. It was the flash that stole his parents, the colour that ended Cedric Diggory's life in an instant, and the deadly force behind Voldemort's reign. Harry knew its name from childhood, Avada Kedavra. He had heard it hissed with delight by Death Eaters, seen it ripple through the air like a sickening promise of silence. Yet through all 7 years at Hogwarts, through countless battles and close brushes with death, he never used it. Not once, not even against Voldemort. This choice baffles many viewers of the Harry Potter films. Why wouldn't the boy who lived, the chosen one, the only wizard known to survive the killing curse, use it himself, especially when faced with someone like Bellatrix Lestrange or Voldemort? Wouldn't it have been practical, effective, final? The answer lies not in tactics but in values. It is a matter of soul. When Harry watched Bellatrix murder Sirius Black in the Department of Mysteries, he was consumed by grief and rage. He attempted the Cruciatus Curse, a dark spell used to torture, but it barely worked. Bellatrix laughed in his face. "You need to mean them, Potter," she said. "You need to really want to cause pain to enjoy it." Harry could summon the words, but his heart, even broken as it was, couldn't summon the cruelty. He did not want to torture her. He wanted her to stop existing, to undo what she'd done. But Avada Kedavra required more than words. It required a total surrender to hatred, and Harry could not give it. This theme surfaces again and again in the books, especially in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. When Snape kills Dumbledore and Harry pursues him across the grounds, he doesn't cry out the killing curse. He hurls spells in desperation, sectum sempra, stupefy, expelliarmus, but even in his fury, he does not turn to murder. Snape escapes, not because Harry lacked power, but because Harry refused to cross a moral threshold. That threshold matters. The unforgivable curses, Avada Kedavra, Crucio, and Imperio, require more than wand movement and incantation. They demand intention. They demand darkness. Barty Crouch Jr., impersonating Mad-Eye Moody, taught Harry's class in Goblet of Fire that only those who truly desire to kill can perform the killing curse effectively. It is not a neutral weapon, it shapes the soul of the caster. By contrast, Harry's signature spell is Expelliarmus, the disarming charm. It's seen by some as too simple, too passive, but it's also deeply symbolic. Harry defeats Voldemort with Expelliarmus. He wins by disarming, not destroying. He wins without becoming what he hates. Consider the duel in the graveyard in Goblet of Fire. Harry, 14 years old, face to face with Voldemort, outmatched in every way, uses Expelliarmus. Not because he thinks it will kill Voldemort, but because it is the only spell that represents who he is. When their wands lock in Priori Incantatem, the battle becomes more than a duel. It is a clash of identities, of souls. Harry's spells reflect his spirit. He defends, protects, pushes away. Voldemort, meanwhile, seeks to dominate, kill, and erase. This dichotomy is made crystal clear in Deathly Hallows during the final confrontation in the Great Hall. Voldemort screams Avada Kedavra. Harry whispers Expelliarmus. The result? Voldemort dies by his own curse because the Elder Wand will not kill its true master. But the story here is more than wand lore. It's about principle. Harry could have chosen to kill. He had the knowledge, the motivation. He watched his friends die, saw Hogwarts burn, felt the weight of war press down on every breath. He had seen so much death that it would have been understandable, even expected, for him to strike back with the same power. But he didn't, because that was Voldemort's way, and Harry had spent 7 years rejecting it. It wasn't that Harry was too weak for Avada Kedavra. On the contrary, his magic was fueled by something far stronger than hatred. In Order of the Phoenix, Dumbledore tells him, there is a room in the Department of Mysteries that is kept locked at all times. It contains a force that is at once more wonderful and more terrible than death. It is the power held within that room that you possess in such quantities and which Voldemort has never had. That force, of course, is love. Love is not a spell, but it infuses Harry's magic. It is what protects him when Voldemort tries to possess him. It is what allows him to sacrifice himself in the forest, knowing he must die to save others. It is why he returns, not to kill, but to shield. When he walks into the forbidden forest to meet death, he does not carry hatred. He carries the memory of his mother, Sirius, Lupin, James. They walk beside him. That, in Rowling's moral universe, makes all the difference. Even when confronting Draco Malfoy in Half-Blood Prince, Harry chooses Sectum Sempra, a spell he doesn't fully understand, out of instinct. But the horror that follows shocks him. He sees Draco bleeding, helpless, terrified. The experience rattles him. He runs to Snape. He never uses Sectum Sempra again in a duel. This was Rowling's warning. Power used recklessly has a cost. Throughout the story, Rowling draws a line between those who use the unforgivable curses, and those who resist them. Bellatrix delights in torture. Lucius uses Imperius to control. Voldemort murders without blinking. The Death Eaters believe power equals domination. But Harry never equates victory with annihilation. His most powerful spells are cast when protecting others, shielding Ginny, defending Ron, saving Dudley from Dementors. Even in hate, he resists the temptation to kill. Consider Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows during the infiltration of Gringotts. When Harry stuns Travers, it's a clean, non-lethal blow. When he fights at Malfoy Manor, his priority is escape, not revenge. Even when Bellatrix threatens Hermione, Harry doesn't reach for death. Instead, it's Dobby who saves them and dies for it. That moment, more than any other, shapes Harry's understanding of sacrifice and heroism. Dumbledore, too, influenced Harry's path, though often criticized for manipulation. Dumbledore modeled restraint. He never killed Grindelwald, even though he could have. When Harry asks why, Dumbledore answers, "Do not pity the dead, Harry. Pity the living, and above all, those who live without love." Dumbledore believed in redemption, in the weight of choice. He taught Harry that power was not a license to destroy. It's easy to forget that killing splits the soul. In Half-Blood Prince, Horace Slughorn explains this to his students. When asked how someone makes a Horcrux, he replies, horrified, "By committing murder, killing rips the soul apart." The act is unnatural. It leaves a mark, one not visible, but deeply felt. Harry knew this. And even at the edge of apocalypse, he chose to keep his soul whole. In the films, this message is less pronounced. The movies, in their cinematic haste, rarely stop to explore the why behind Harry's decisions. They show him casting spells, dodging curses, winning battles, but they often miss the quiet restraint, the philosophical weight of each choice. That's why film-only viewers might assume Harry's reluctance is naivete or cowardice, but in truth it's strength. The books make it clear Harry doesn't want to be a killer. He wants to survive, yes, but more than that, he wants to live with himself afterward. He wants to walk away from the war with his integrity intact. That's why his victory is more complete than Voldemort's ever could be. He wins the war and keeps his soul. There is one more key moment, when Harry spares Peter Pettigrew in the Shrieking Shack. Sirius and Lupin want to kill him. They have every reason. But Harry insists they hand him over to the Dementors. "I'm not going to be the one who kills him," he says. Later, that decision saves his life. When Pettigrew hesitates in the dungeons of Malfoy Manor, mercy has consequences. Harry never seeks the easy path. He knows that to become like Voldemort is to lose the war, no matter the outcome. The series teaches us that intentions matter, that the how is as important as the what. In the end, Harry defeats Voldemort not just with wand work, but with moral clarity. He chooses Expelliarmus over Avada Kedavra again and again, not because it's easy, but because it's right. And that, in Rowling's world, is real magic. Number 18. Voldemort's inability to understand love, Philosopher's Stone and Deathly Hallows. There is a truth buried at the heart of the Harry Potter saga that few pause to reflect upon, though it screams from the pages of both the Philosopher's Stone and the Deathly Hallows. Lord Voldemort, the darkest wizard of his age, did not fall because Harry was more powerful, more cunning, or even more brave. He fell because he never understood love. That ignorance, nurtured in a cold orphanage and sharpened by ambition and pride, became the fatal flaw in a man who sought immortality. Voldemort did not just lack love, he denied its very existence, dismissed it as a lie for the weak. That blindness cost him everything. In the Philosopher's Stone, Dumbledore tells Harry with simple clarity, "Your mother died to save you. If there is one thing Voldemort cannot understand, it is love." But the tragedy of Voldemort's failure is not just that he didn't understand it, it's that he never even tried to. From his earliest days as Tom Riddle, he grew up without the warmth of human affection, raised in a sterile orphanage where emotions were dulled and personal bonds discouraged. He was brilliant, manipulative, and isolated. He learned how to bend people, not to connect with them. He asked Dumbledore at the age of 11 whether he could control others using magic. That was his version of power, not protection, not healing, but domination. There's a reason why Voldemort could never comprehend Lily's sacrifice. To him, Lily's act was irrational. Why would someone give up their life for another? Why not flee, hide, or bargain? He believed she could have stepped aside. "Stand aside, girl, stand aside," he reportedly told her, baffled by her defiance. But Lily's choice was not about logic or self-preservation. It was about love, selfless, unconditional, ancient. It created a protective magic that not only saved Harry's life, but also tethered his soul so firmly to the world that even the killing curse rebounded. Voldemort saw emotions as tools, weapons to manipulate. Love, to him, was a weakness, a distraction from the pursuit of power. But magic in the wizarding world is not only about spells and wands, it is deeply rooted in emotion. A Patronus, after all, can only be conjured from a happy memory. The Room of Requirement responds to deep inner desire. The Elder Wand, most powerful of all, refuses to truly serve anyone who gains it through greed or force. The wizarding world rewards intention, heart, and loyalty. Voldemort never grasped this. Consider the mirror of Erysede. Harry sees his family, the parents he never knew. Dumbledore tells him, "It shows us nothing more or less than the deepest, most desperate desire of our hearts." What would Voldemort have seen? Perhaps himself, eternal, invincible, adored. But there is no one beside him in that vision, no mother, no friend, no follower, only himself. Voldemort's greatest wish was immortality, but it was a hollow kind of life, devoid of connection, of meaning. The tragedy is not just that he desired the wrong thing, but that he never realized anything was missing. When he created the Horcruxes, Voldemort mutilated his soul, splitting it repeatedly in acts of murder. He did this not for vengeance or grief, but for strategy. He believed death was the ultimate enemy and sought to conquer it. But what he never saw was that fear of death is not the opposite of bravery, it's the absence of love. As Dumbledore later said, "Do not pity the dead, Harry, pity the living, and above all, those who live without love." It was a direct condemnation of Voldemort's choices. He lived without love, and therefore without life. One must reflect on his decision to use Harry's blood in the resurrection ritual in the Goblet of Fire. It was a decision he thought clever. By using Harry's blood, he believed he would bypass the protection Lily left. But by doing so, he unknowingly tethered himself to Harry's survival. "He took your blood believing it would strengthen him," Dumbledore explains. "He took into himself a tiny part of the enchantment your mother laid upon you when she died in your place." In essence, Voldemort built his new body upon the very love he disdained. He trapped himself. The final duel in the Deathly Hallows is more than a battle of spells. It is a symbolic reckoning between two ideologies. Voldemort, armed with the Elder Wand, believes in raw, unmatched power. Harry, wandless at first, believes in loyalty, in sacrifice, in friendship. That is why the wand will not obey Voldemort. It recognizes that true power does not come from force, but from worth. Dumbledore had said it before. Perhaps those who are best suited to power are those who have never sought it. Voldemort sought it relentlessly, and in doing so, lost everything. Snape is perhaps the cruelest reminder of what Voldemort could never be. Severus Snape, a man who lived in pain, bitterness, and regret, nevertheless loved. His love for Lily Potter defined him. It was not enough to save her, but it was enough to transform him. "After all this time?" Dumbledore asked. "Always," Snape replied. That one word became a monument to the idea that love outlives even death. Voldemort saw Snape as a tool, never realizing that his most loyal servant was loyal only to a woman he had murdered. In the Half-Blood Prince, we learn that Dumbledore once warned Voldemort not to create more Horcruxes. He sensed the boy's fascination with death and the soul. "You are a clever boy, Tom," he told him, "but not modest. Cleverness isn't everything." But Voldemort had no capacity for modesty. He believed that emotion made wizards weak. He never grasped that Dumbledore's wisdom came not from spells or intellect, but from experience, loss, and love. That was why Dumbledore could face death willingly. He knew it was not the end, only a beginning. Voldemort, by contrast, clung to life with desperation. Even in small details, Voldemort's failure to understand love is evident. He never forged true relationships. He used Bellatrix's devotion, Lucius's ambition, and Nagini's loyalty as mere instruments. Bellatrix loved him in her own deranged way, but he never returned that affection. In The Cursed Child, it is suggested that they may have even had a child, but even then, love was not the seed. It was power, a legacy. Voldemort could not even comprehend the idea of partnership. He trusted no one, and no one truly loved him. Contrast this with Harry's journey. He is not a particularly gifted student. He struggles with occlumency, fails to brew potions properly, and is often reckless. But what sets him apart is not magical talent. It's his ability to love and be loved, his friendships with Hermione and Ron, his deep connection to Sirius and Lupin, his grief for Dobby, his defense of house elves, all are signs of his moral compass. He fights not for glory, but for others. That is what gives him strength, even when wandless. That is what turns the tide. In the Order of the Phoenix, Harry experiences unbearable grief after Sirius's death. He lashes out, withdraws, even doubts Dumbledore, but out of that pain comes empathy. He begins to understand what others suffer, especially Neville, Luna, and even Kreacher. Voldemort, in contrast, felt nothing after killing. Each murder was a calculation, a means to an end. He rid himself of his own father, murdered Bertha Jorkins, and tortured the Longbottom's fate into madness, all without remorse. It wasn't just that he lacked a heart. He destroyed it willingly. The books show that magic reflects the soul. The wand chooses the wizard. The Patronus reflects one's happiest memory. The Horcrux requires a murder. But love requires nothing but the giving of oneself. No spell, no wand movement, just intent. Lily's love for Harry needed no incantation. It was the most powerful magic because it came from truth. Voldemort, who could split his soul but not open his heart, was defenseless against it. He could break bones, control minds, and fly unaided, but he could not protect himself from love. Perhaps the most poetic moment of the saga is not Harry's survival, but his decision to walk into the forbidden forest in the Deathly Hallows. He chooses to die. He accepts it, not with anger, but with peace. He is not driven by hatred for Voldemort, but by love for his friends. He embraces death willingly to save others. That act, more than any spell, breaks the hold Voldemort has on Hogwarts. It destroys the final Horcrux. Voldemort had always feared death. Harry chose it, and in doing so, conquered it. In the final scene, when Voldemort's body crumples lifelessly, there is no grand explosion, no dramatic light, just silence. Tom Riddle hit the floor with a mundane finality, the book reads. It was not a death worthy of legend because his life was not. He had spent years chasing immortality, only to die alone and unloved. His death was quiet because he had become nothing. He had built no legacy of kindness, left behind no family, inspired no stories of hope. Only fear. And fear dies with silence. There is a lesson, tucked quietly in the epilogue, as Harry sends his son off to Hogwarts. He names him Albus Severus, after two men who taught him what love really means. One who raised him, one who protected him. It is a reminder that the saga was never truly about wands or beasts or spells. It was about choice. And Voldemort chose wrong at every step. Not because he wasn't intelligent, but because he thought love was fiction. He thought invulnerability was victory. He never saw that love is the oldest and strongest form of magic. In truth, the Philosopher's Stone and the Deathly Hallows are bookends to the same idea. The first shows us a boy saved by love. The last shows us a man destroyed by the lack of it. And in between, the world spins with echoes of that same theme. Parents who protect, friends who sacrifice, enemies who redeem. Voldemort's story is not just a tale of evil, it is a warning. Brilliance without empathy becomes monstrosity. His defeat was not just magical, it was moral. He lost not when he died, but when he rejected love. So when Dumbledore says it is our choices that show what we truly are, far more than our abilities, he speaks not just to Harry, but to us. Voldemort chose to deny love, and that denial made him less than human. He was not defeated by a wand, but by the boy who understood that to be strong is to care, that to fight is to protect, and that love, though invisible, leaves the deepest mark of all. Number 19. The real reason. Harry could see Voldemort's thoughts, Order of the Phoenix and Half-Blood Prince. Harry Potter's connection to Lord Voldemort was never just a magical coincidence. It was a carefully planted seed, one that grew in silence and bloomed into something dark and terrifying by the time the Order of the Phoenix and the Half-Blood Prince unfolded. While the films merely hinted at this strange link, the books, rich with psychological depth, pulled back the curtain to reveal a disturbing truth. Harry was an unintentional Horcrux. And that changed everything. From the earliest pages of the Order of the Phoenix, readers are thrust into Harry's increasingly unstable mind. He dreams of dark corridors, of locked doors, of strange, throbbing emotions that don't belong to him. The dreams are not metaphorical. They are real glimpses into Voldemort's actions and emotional states. "He's got inside you, Harry," Dumbledore finally tells him, but by then the damage is already deep. The boy is not just seeing Voldemort, he is feeling him. Rage that burns like acid, joy that is cold and cruel, fear that curls like smoke in his lungs. This connection didn't happen randomly. When Voldemort tried to kill baby Harry, the curse rebounded. Part of Voldemort's soul, already torn by his previous Horcrux creations, latched onto the only living thing in the room, Harry. As Dumbledore would later explain, "Lord Voldemort put a bit of himself in me," Harry had asked. "It certainly seems so." Deathly Hallows, page 35. That moment made Harry the seventh unknown Horcrux, carrying within him a piece of the darkest wizard who had ever lived. In the Order of the Phoenix, the consequences of this are no longer theoretical. Harry's dreams become more intense. They don't just show images, they carry sensations. He dreams of Arthur Weasley's attack not as an observer, but through the snake's eyes. He feels the hunger, the instinct, the vicious glee of Nagini as she strikes. "It was like being possessed," he tells Dumbledore later, shivering not from cold, but from the memory of feeling good while watching someone suffer. What's more alarming is how these experiences begin to affect Harry's self-perception. He wonders if the Sorting Hat was right to consider Slytherin. He worries he might want to hurt others. After his vision of the Department of Mysteries, he doesn't just fear Voldemort, he fears himself. He could not remember ever feeling lonelier. There was no one left to tell. Order of the Phoenix, page 24. He doesn't know who he is anymore. This is where the book diverges most dramatically from the film. The cinematic version shows the connection as a plot device, useful for advancing the story. But in the book, it's a psychological battle. Every time Harry taps into Voldemort's mind, it costs him a piece of his own identity. He grows irritable, restless. He distances himself from Ron and Hermione. He lashes out at Dumbledore. The rage is not his own, yet it lives in him. Dumbledore, in his guilt and wisdom, knows exactly what is happening. He avoids Harry not out of cruelty, but out of fear. "I cared about you too much," he confesses in The Half-Blood Prince. If Voldemort could sense what Harry felt, then love, Dumbledore's affection, could become a weapon. But for Harry, the silence is betrayal. It deepens the rift inside him, making Voldemort's influence stronger. The occlumency lessons with Severus Snape are introduced to seal the mental link, yet ironically they expose Harry further. The sessions are brutal, invasive, and humiliating. Snape offers no comfort, no encouragement, only sharp commands and sneering dismissals. Each failed attempt to block the connection feels like a personal failure. Worse, during one disastrous session, Harry accesses one of Snape's own memories, seeing the infamous Mudblood incident with Lily. The mind is no longer a safe space for either of them. As Voldemort gains power, so does the pull. Harry begins to crave the visions, not just to help the Order, but because they make him feel. When he dreams of Voldemort acquiring the prophecy, he experiences triumph, Voldemort's triumph. He felt a kind of cruel excitement at the thought. Order of the Phoenix, Chort 31. The boundary between their minds is crumbling. The soul fragment inside Harry isn't passive, it's alive. This reaches a terrifying climax after Sirius Black's death. Grief floods Harry's body, but so does something else. Let the pain flood through him. It was his, and Voldemort could not have it. Order of the Phoenix, Chint 37. In that moment, Harry reclaims part of himself. He understands that the connection is not who he is. It's a foreign invader, but the war is far from over. In the Half-Blood Prince, the connection takes on a more strategic tone. Voldemort, now cautious, hides his thoughts. But Harry begins to learn about the Dark Lord's past through Dumbledore's pensive sessions. These memories, though not directly linked to the soul bond, provide context. Harry sees the boy Tom Riddle, his charm, his cruelty, his thirst for control. He realizes that they are both orphans, both Parselmouths, both marked by destiny. You are the true master of death, because the true master does not seek to run away from death. Deathly Hallows, Chechi 35. Yet where Tom ran, Harry stood still. And still, the link simmers beneath the surface. When Dumbledore is killed, Harry doesn't feel Voldemort's presence, but that doesn't mean it's gone. It's simply dormant, biding its time. The Horcrux inside him is patient. It waits until Deathly Hallows to rear its head fully again. But the seeds are planted here, the agony, the confusion, the disconnection from his own emotions. The existence of this soul fragment changes not only Harry's powers but his essence. It explains why he can speak Parseltongue, why the Sorting Hat considered Slytherin, why he understands Voldemort in ways no one else can. We're very alike, you and I, Tom Riddle tells him in Chamber of Secrets. At the time it sounds like villainous bravado, but it's the truth. This realization haunts Harry more than any prophecy, that he might become like the man he hates, that perhaps he already is. He compares his instincts, his anger, his ability to hurt. He watches himself. He measures every reaction. This self-surveillance is subtle but painful. When he uses Sectum Sempra on Draco in Half-Blood Prince, the result horrifies him. He had not meant to cause this much damage. He wonders fleetingly if this is what Voldemort felt when he first harmed someone. The books never let Harry off the hook. He is not a flawless hero. He is someone with a piece of evil living in his very soul, and he must constantly choose to be good. That's why the climax of Order of the Phoenix is so powerful, not just because of the battle at the Ministry, but because Harry faces Voldemort within himself. When the Dark Lord tries to possess him, Harry pushes back, not with anger, but with love. He thinks of Sirius, of friendship, of laughter. You're the weak one. You'll never know love or friendship. Order of the Phoenix, Chechi 36. And Voldemort cannot stay. This act of rejection is not merely magical. It is a psychological triumph. Harry chooses who he is and who he is not. He defines himself not by the soul he carries, but by the soul he nurtures. By the time the Half-Blood Prince ends, Harry has grown. The visions stop. The connection quiets. But only because Voldemort begins to fear it. He starts using occlumency himself. He knows Harry has seen too much. Ironically, as Voldemort retreats, Harry finds clarity. He sees the road ahead. The boy who was once lost in a sea of foreign emotions is now ready to destroy the source of them. It's important to understand that this story arc, Harry's identity crisis caused by being an unknowing Horcrux, is central to the series. It elevates him from a chosen one to a tested one. His courage isn't about spells or duels. It's about resisting what lives inside him. The films, regrettably, gloss over much of this, the psychological toll, the existential dread, the subtle unraveling of self. Without these elements, the link between Harry and Voldemort feels like a convenient plot shortcut. In the books, it's a slow poisoning, and the antidote is love. In the end, what saves Harry isn't strength or strategy. It's self-awareness. He learns to recognize what thoughts are his and which are not. He guards his heart. He grieves, but he never lets grief define him. And when the final confrontation arrives, he walks into death, not because he's fearless, but because he knows who he is. Do not pity the dead, Harry. Pity the living, and above all, those who live without love. Deathly Hallows, Chibber 35. That is the final rejection of Voldemort. The scar on Harry's forehead was always symbolic. A mark of survival, yes, but also a doorway, a crack through which evil could whisper. And for a while it did. But Harry, unlike Voldemort, listened to love louder than he listened to fear. That's why he lived. That's why the fragment died. And that's why readers will never forget what the films left out. Number 20. Why Voldemort couldn't kill baby Harry, Philosopher's Stone. When Lord Voldemort stepped into the quiet cottage in Godric's Hollow on that fateful Halloween night, he believed he was unstoppable. The world feared his name, and even death itself seemed to bow before him. James Potter fell first, without a wand in hand, without time to scream. Then came Lily, pleading not for her life, but for the life of her child. "Not Harry," she begged, standing between her son and a monster. What followed was not just the fall of a Dark Lord, but the release of ancient magic, so deep, so primal, that even Voldemort, with all his cunning, failed to foresee its power. The spell he used was the killing curse, Avada Kedavra, a green bolt of death that had never missed its mark. It had ended the lives of countless witches and wizards, many of them skilled and prepared. Yet when it struck the infant Harry, it did not kill. Instead, it rebounded. Voldemort's body was destroyed, his soul torn from it, and the wizarding world was changed forever. The films show this with cinematic brevity, a flash of green, a scream, a scar. But the truth lies deeper, encoded not in the visual effects of the screen, but in the carefully crafted magic of J.K. Rowling's original text. The key to this miracle lies not in a counter-curse or a hidden wand, but in the most underestimated force in Voldemort's world, love. Dumbledore, wise beyond the comprehension of most, understood this. He later explained to Harry in the Philosopher's Stone, "Your mother died to save you. If there is one thing Voldemort cannot understand, it is love." Lily's sacrifice was not merely emotional, it was magical. She was given a choice. Voldemort had offered to spare her. Her refusal was the trigger. This choice, this act of willingly laying down her life without coercion, is the basis of what Dumbledore referred to as old magic. Ancient and largely forgotten, it was magic that lived not in books or classrooms, but in the deepest places of human instinct and spirit. When Lily stood her ground and refused to abandon her son, she invoked a protection as powerful as any curse or charm, sacrificial love. This wasn't metaphorical. In the magical world, intention matters. Magic responds not only to words, but to purpose. When Voldemort cast the killing curse at Harry, Lily's sacrifice activated a kind of magical shield. It enveloped Harry in her final act of love, creating a binding protection so powerful that it didn't just save Harry, it destroyed Voldemort. The curse had nowhere to go. Love, ancient and absolute, absorbed it and hurled it back at its sender. It is a stunning paradox. The most feared curse in existence was undone not by violence, but by mercy. What's vital to understand here is that this was not an accidental loophole. This is magic of the most deliberate kind. Rowling's world is not arbitrary. Spells do not work without the correct emotion or focus. Just as a Patronus requires a happy memory, cannot be conjured in fear, this protection could only have formed because Lily chose to die. Had she died while trying to flee, or while begging for her own life, it would not have worked. The distinction is sharp and unforgiving. Dumbledore later reinforces this to Harry in the Order of the Phoenix, when he says, "There is a room in the Department of Mysteries that is kept locked at all times. It contains a force that is at once more wonderful and more terrible than death, than human intelligence, than forces of nature. he's speaking of love. The Ministry may not understand it. Voldemort certainly does not. But the consequences of ignoring it are catastrophic. The protection Lily gave Harry lasted beyond her death. Dumbledore, ever vigilant, ensured it would continue by placing Harry in the care of her sister, Petunia Dursley. As unpleasant as she was, Petunia shared Lily's blood, and as Dumbledore explained in The Half-Blood Prince, while you can still call home the place where your mother's blood dwells, there he cannot touch you. Harry was safe not just because of a one-time act, but because Dumbledore amplified the protection by anchoring it to family and blood. This detail is nearly absent in the films, which gloss over the logic of Harry's survival and protection. But Rowling weaves it carefully through her narrative. Every summer, Harry's return to Privet Drive was not merely a plot mechanism to frustrate him. It was a renewal of the shield, a recharging of the love-based protection that Lily had given and Dumbledore had preserved. As long as Harry lived with Petunia, the magic remained intact. When Voldemort returned in the Goblet of Fire, he had learned a lesson. He took Harry's blood into his own body, believing it would neutralize the protection. In a way it did. He could now touch Harry without pain, but in doing so he tethered Harry's life to his own. He did not realize he had also absorbed a fragment of that protective magic, binding himself to the boy he sought to destroy. Dumbledore's genius lay in understanding that Voldemort's ignorance of love was his greatest weakness. The irony is bitter. Voldemort, who sought immortality above all things, sealed his fate by misunderstanding the very force that could have saved his soul. He split it into pieces, created Horcruxes, and believed power came from domination and fear. But Harry's survival was a reminder that magic is not only about control, it is about connection. When Lily protected Harry, she created a living link between them, one that even death could not sever. This bond is so strong that it continued to affect Voldemort's magic years later. In the Philosopher's Stone, Quirrell, possessed by Voldemort, tries to kill Harry, but he cannot touch him. His hands burn on contact. The book reads, "His hands began to blister. He howled in pain." This is not because Harry cast a spell. It is because Lily's protection still lived in his skin. Her love, flowing in his veins, was poison to Voldemort. Quirrell's death is an extension of this magic. He dies not because Harry attacks him, but because Voldemort's hatred cannot coexist with Lily's love. It is an uncontainable chemical reaction, and again, Harry is a passive participant. He does not act out of aggression, only confusion. The power lies in what has been done for him, not what he does himself. This idea is reinforced again in the Deathly Hallows when Harry walks into the forest to die. He offers himself willingly to save others. In doing so, he replicates Lily's act. The spell Voldemort casts hits him, but again, it does not work as intended. Harry survives. Why? Because the Elder Wand, which Voldemort uses, belongs to Harry. But even beyond the wand's allegiance, the act of self-sacrifice empowers Harry. He doesn't know it, but he is cloaking his friends in the same protective magic that once saved him. Voldemort's spells begin to fail again. Voldemort's downfall was never just about Horcruxes or prophecy. It was about misunderstanding the nature of power. He thought love was weakness. He thought death was defeat. He thought a child could not resist the killing curse, and he was wrong on all counts. Lily's choice was a single moment, but its ripples extended across 17 years of magical history. Even Harry's scar, iconic, cursed, and burning, was a reminder of the failed curse and the protection that came with it. It wasn't just a mark. It was a seal, a sign that magic had turned against its master. Voldemort left that scar, but he also left a part of himself inside Harry. This connection was not merely symbolic, it was literal. Harry became a Horcrux unknowingly. And yet it was only possible because the curse rebounded and Voldemort's soul had nowhere to go. He was shattered. Rowling's construction of this magical law is meticulous. There are no shortcuts, no sudden tricks. Everything is rooted in the logic of her world: intent, sacrifice, blood, choice. The films may show Lily's death as a fleeting image, but in truth, it was the most pivotal spell of the series. A mother's love freely given, changed the world. And it began not with a wand, but with a decision. It is worth reflecting on how many times this protection reshaped events. Dumbledore's decisions, Snape's loyalty to Lily, even Harry's capacity to forgive and to spare Draco in the Room of Requirement all stem from that one night in Godric's Hollow. The magic was real. But it was never only magic, it was human, moral, eternal. And so, when fans ask why Voldemort could not kill a baby, the answer lies in the kind of power he never sought to understand. The killing curse was strong, but Lily Potter was stronger. Number 21, what Patronuses really reveal. Order of the Phoenix and Half-Blood Prince. Few things in the wizarding world are as hauntingly beautiful as the Patronus charm. It is more than just a spell. It is an echo of the soul, a shimmer of identity, a protective force born from the most sacred feelings, hope, love, and memory. In Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix and Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, the full poetic depth of this charm reveals itself. The silvery forms of Patronuses are not merely shields against Dementors, they are intimate portraits of the hearts that cast them. Harry Potter's Patronus is a stag, a creature of strength and grace, of freedom and silent power. When he first casts it in Prisoner of Azkaban, he does not yet know the legacy of that shape. But, by order of the Phoenix, its deeper meaning begins to crystallize. The stag is not just his own strength made visible, it is a living memory of James Potter, his father, who also bore the same animagus form. When Harry's Patronus bursts forth in the Room of Requirement as he teaches Dumbledore's army, he unknowingly casts not just protection, but a spiritual inheritance. The legacy of the Marauders lives within him, etched into the very magic he produces. The spell, Expecto Patronum, requires more than wand work. It asks the caster to summon the happiest memory they possess, something luminous enough to withstand the sucking emptiness of Dementors. Hermione Granger, for instance, conjures a Patronus in the shape of an otter. It is a seemingly curious choice until one understands the qualities of the animal: intelligent, playful, swift, and deeply connected to water. These are all qualities reflected in Hermione's own character. Otters are social, loyal, and highly perceptive, a fitting mirror of her mind and spirit. The shape is not chosen, it emerges from within, shaped by the caster's innermost essence. But nowhere is the emotional gravity of the Patronus more devastating than in the case of Severus Snape. In the Half-Blood Prince, Snape is a man of layers and shadows, bound by secrets and bitterness, yet his Patronus, revealed fully in the Deathly Hallows, though foreshadowed earlier, pierces through all facades. A doe, gentle, quiet, elusive, the same as Lily Potter's, the same as the girl he loved since childhood, the girl he could never protect in life, but for whom he dedicates his every breath in death. When Dumbledore sees it and asks, "After all this time?" Snape replies, "Always." That one word explains everything. His Patronus is not merely a spell, it is grief shaped into light. This connection is subtly layered in Order of the Phoenix. The Patronus becomes a method of secret communication within the Order itself. Dumbledore's Silver Phoenix, majestic and eternal, delivers messages like ghostly messengers across the darkened sky. Kingsley Shacklebolt's Patronus, a lynx, symbolizes keen vision and silent strength, guarding the wizarding world's secrets in the face of ministry corruption. These are not arbitrary animals, they are reflections of character, distilled and purified. In Order of the Phoenix, Harry begins to teach the Patronus to others. He trains a group of students, some of whom struggle to produce even a flicker of silver light. That struggle speaks volumes. Casting a Patronus requires more than skill. It requires emotional clarity, a reason to fight, a memory that burns with hope. Luna Lovegood succeeds. Her Patronus is a hare, nimble and otherworldly, much like herself. Luna's mind dances in realms others cannot see, and her magic responds accordingly. Her Patronus becomes an extension of her otherness, her wisdom, her calm. Cho Chang, still grieving Cedric Diggory's death, manages to cast a swan. There is something heartbreakingly beautiful about it. The swan, a creature of mourning and loyalty, mirrors her sorrow and her grace. Patronuses are shaped not only by our personality, but by our pain, our longings, our love. They are shaped by who we miss, what we hope for, and who we once were. Arthur Weasley's Patronus, though not revealed in detail until later, is said to be a weasel, humble, underestimated, resourceful, a perfect emblem for a man who may not command fear, but who holds a strength most overlooked. In contrast, Molly Weasley's Patronus takes the form of a motherly figure, her entire essence consumed by love and protection. These details, while quiet in the films, thunder in the books. They are the soul's autobiography, written in light. Albus Dumbledore's Patronus is fittingly a phoenix. Fawkes, his beloved companion, is mirrored in his magical projection. The phoenix is rebirth, healing, and immortality. Dumbledore has seen too much to believe in permanence. Instead, he believes in transformation. His Patronus does not scream power, it whispers transcendence. It is no coincidence that the Order of the Phoenix is named for this bird. To fight evil, one must be ready to rise from ashes. Minerva McGonagall's Patronus is a trio of silver tabby cats. It is not merely a nod to her animagus form, it reveals her unity of self. She is both the disciplined professor and the fiercely protective warrior. The cats symbolize independence, intuition, and guardianship. Her Patronus does not defend, it watches, plans, and pounces only when needed. It speaks of a mind sharpened by reason and a heart fortified by resolve. Even Dolores Umbridge, foul as she is, casts a Patronus, a cat of all things, elegant, smug, and cruelly self-contained. What is haunting here is not the shape, but the fact that she can cast it at all. That even hatred, under the delusion of righteousness, can manifest something so deceptively graceful. Her Patronus is a lie made of light, a terrifying notion that not all Patronuses are noble. Aberforth Dumbledore, Albus's estranged brother, casts a goat, a reference to his quiet, humble life and the creatures he cared for. It's also a nod to his loss and regrets. Patronuses are not just what we are, they are what we wish we could hold on to. Sometimes they are shaped by guilt, by unresolved pasts, by ghosts we never managed to lay to rest. Tonks, once known for her lively and rebellious nature, had a Patronus that originally took the form of a jackrabbit. But after she falls in love with Remus Lupin, her Patronus changes. It becomes a wolf. This rare transformation shows the power of emotion to reshape even our magical core. When Dumbledore notices the change and comments, Tonks's response is simple, but weighted. It's him. The wolf is not just a symbol of Lupin, it is an emblem of her devotion to him, despite the world's judgment. Remus Lupin's own Patronus, we may presume, remains non-corporeal. As a werewolf, he fears what his magic might reveal. He carries too much self-loathing to produce a confident corporeal shape. This detail, while small, speaks to a man who protects others more easily than he protects himself. His fear of himself is so deep, it even shapes his magic. In The Half-Blood Prince, as Dumbledore and Harry hunt Horcruxes, the Patronus no longer serves just a defensive purpose. It becomes a symbol of what is worth saving. The magic of the Patronus lies not in combat, but in memory. It reminds the caster and the reader that in the darkest hour, light can be summoned from within. The Patronus becomes an anchor against despair. Snape's Patronus remains the most profound. When he casts it for Dumbledore in the Forbidden Forest and the silvery doe steps forward, the silence is louder than any spell. "You have your mother's eyes," Harry is told countless times, but it is here, through Snape's Patronus, that the weight of that connection is revealed. Snape has lived a life shrouded in regret, but his love for Lily has not dimmed. His Patronus is not a symbol of hope, it is a relic of sorrow. It is memory, grief, and penance, all in one. What makes Snape's Patronus unique is not just that it mirrors Lily's, but that it has not changed. Years after her death, through war and betrayal, his Patronus has remained loyal. It is perhaps the only constant in his life. Where Tonks's Patronus changed with love, Snape's remained in mourning. In that, it becomes not just a shield, but a shrine. In the final battle, when members of the Order arrive at Hogwarts and their Patronuses sweep through the Great Hall, there is a momentary feeling of warmth amidst chaos. Silver creatures leap across the floor, trailing hope behind them. They are not just spells, they are manifestations of those who refuse to give in. In the face of Voldemort's hatred, it is the Patronus that declares without words, "We remember who we are." Patronuses are not weapons. They are memories that fight. They are love stories, personal oaths, fragments of the soul made visible. They do not just repel darkness, they declare light. In Order of the Phoenix and Half-Blood Prince, the Patronus evolves from a defensive charm into a window to the heart. For Harry, it is a connection to his father. For Hermione, a reflection of intellect and compassion. For Snape, a tombstone in silver. And for the reader, the Patronus becomes a question. If you were to cast one, what would it be? What part of your soul would it reveal? Who would it remember? And when the darkness comes, would you be able to find that one memory strong enough to shine? Number 22. Why Draco couldn't kill Dumbledore, Half-Blood Prince. Draco Malfoy walked through the corridors of Hogwarts in his 6th year, not as a proud Slytherin prince, but as a shadow of the boy he used to be. Gone was the smug smirk, the careless laughter with Crabbe and Goyle, the constant need to prove himself in front of Harry Potter. In its place, there was a silence that unsettled even his closest allies. The once arrogant boy now looked hollow, ghost-like. He had grown pale, his face drawn, and dark circles clung under his eyes like bruises of guilt. For the first time in the series, Draco was not a bully, he was a prisoner. In Half-Blood Prince, Draco becomes a tool in Lord Voldemort's cruel game of vengeance. By tasking the 16-year-old with the murder of Albus Dumbledore, Voldemort showed his utter ruthlessness, not just toward enemies, but also toward his followers. This was not a mission of glory, it was a sentence. If Draco failed, his entire family would suffer, and if he succeeded, he would be forever changed. There was no victory in either outcome. We see this weight reflected in how Draco isolates himself. He distances himself from his friends, no longer finding joy in petty pranks or house rivalries. He haunts the room of requirement like a ghost trying to stitch together a broken plan. The vanishing cabinet, which he works tirelessly to repair, becomes a symbol of his desperation, a mechanical escape from an emotional cage. He's not just mending wood and magic, he's trying to piece together the one way out of killing a man he doesn't want to harm. In the book, J.K. Rowling gives us access to Draco's psychological torment in a way the film only hints at. On the Hogwarts Express, Harry uses his invisibility cloak to spy on Draco and finds him in a state of unguarded vulnerability. When Harry is discovered, Draco's reaction is not simply violent, it's terrifying in its intensity. He stomps on Harry's face with unnecessary force, nearly breaking his nose. This cruelty is not malice, it is panic. Draco lashes out like an animal cornered. He's terrified, and he doesn't know how to express it except through violence. One of the most revealing moments comes in the bathroom scene where Harry catches Draco crying in front of the mirror. This is not the image of the villain we've come to expect. This is a boy, broken and scared. When Harry confronts him, Draco's immediate response is fear, not arrogance. The duel escalates quickly, ending with Harry using Sectum Sempra, a spell he doesn't fully understand, on Draco. The wounds are horrific. Draco lies bleeding on the floor and the scene is drenched in metaphor. This is a boy being physically torn open, but he was already bleeding inside. Snape arrives just in time to save him, but the real wound remains untreated. Rowling plants subtle but powerful seeds of Draco's humanity throughout the book. Despite his upbringing and years of parroting his father's prejudices, Draco does not enjoy serving the Dark Lord. In fact, he seems to despise it. He is not like Bellatrix Lestrange, who cackles in the face of destruction. He is not like Fenrir Greyback, who delights in carnage. Draco is still a child who's been handed a loaded wand and told to kill one of the most powerful wizards in the world. The narrative crescendos when Draco finally corners Dumbledore atop the astronomy tower. The old headmaster is disarmed. He's weak, unprotected, yet calm. He speaks to Draco not with fear, but with empathy. Dumbledore sees through Draco's trembling hands and spots the truth. Draco, Draco, you are not a killer. The sentence is not an accusation. It is an invitation to choose differently. In that moment, Dumbledore is not trying to survive. He's trying to save Draco's soul. Draco hesitates. His wand is raised, but his heart isn't in it. The Death Eaters arrive, urging him on, but he doesn't move. He is paralyzed by his own conscience. It would be so easy to say the words, to become the murderer Voldemort wants him to be, but he doesn't. Not because he's afraid to kill, but because deep down he knows it would destroy the last part of himself that remains innocent. This is the critical point that the films only brush over. On screen, Draco's silence could be mistaken for cowardice. But in the book, we feel the agony of his indecision. Rowling doesn't allow us to look away. Draco's internal battle is painfully human. He is neither a hero nor a villain. He is something more complicated, a boy caught between loyalty to his family and the desire not to become a monster. The fear Draco feels is not for himself, it's for his parents. Narcissa and Lucius Malfoy, once proud aristocrats of the wizarding world, have fallen from grace. Lucius is disgraced, having failed to retrieve the prophecy. Narcissa is desperate, risking her life to extract a promise from Severus Snape to protect her son. He's just a boy, she pleads, and that's the tragic truth. Voldemort doesn't see Draco as a boy, he sees him as a message. Draco's reluctance also reveals something Voldemort failed to consider. Human weakness is not always weakness. In Draco's case, it is strength. His inability to kill shows a kind of moral core that refuses to be extinguished even under immense pressure. He may be a Malfoy, he may be a Slytherin, but he is not without a conscience. Interestingly, Draco's story contrasts sharply with that of Tom Riddle himself. Riddle killed without remorse, even as a teenager. He relished control, manipulation, power. Draco, for all his swagger, cannot bring himself to cross that line. The boy who once mocked Harry for being the boy who lived now finds himself unable to end a life. And in that hesitation lies a redemption far more subtle than any spell. Snape's intervention, killing Dumbledore in Draco's place, is often interpreted as a final betrayal. But in reality, it is an act of twisted mercy. By fulfilling the unbreakable vow, Snape both protects his own life and saves Draco's soul. Dumbledore knew this would happen. He planned it, not to preserve himself, but to preserve Draco. He saw that if Draco committed murder, it would be the end of him, not physically, but spiritually. Rowling reinforces this complexity in Deathly Hallows when Draco, though still conflicted, cannot bring himself to identify Harry to the Death Eaters at Malfoy Manor. Even after everything, after months of serving Voldemort, watching torture, and living in fear, Draco still cannot give Harry away. He is not brave like Harry, nor wise like Hermione, nor loyal like Ron, but he is no longer cruel for cruelty's sake. The boy who once laughed at Buckbeak's execution now trembles before a broken world he does not want to be part of. The most haunting truth is that Draco never asked for any of this. He was born into a legacy of prejudice and power, raised by a father who worshipped the Dark Lord and a mother who only wanted to keep her son safe. He never had the luxury of choice, not until that night on the tower. And when the moment finally came, he chose not to kill. That decision, silent and almost invisible, was his act of rebellion. The Harry Potter series is filled with characters who are symbols. Dumbledore, the wise mentor. Voldemort, the embodiment of evil. Harry, the reluctant hero. But Draco is not a symbol. He is a mirror. He shows us what it means to grow up too fast, to be forced into choices before one is ready, to carry burdens too heavy for a child's shoulders. He reminds us that the line between good and evil runs through every human heart. In the end, Draco's greatest strength is not in spellwork or bloodline, it's in his refusal. In a world torn apart by violence and ideology, he refuses to become a killer. That one moment of defiance, quiet and almost unnoticed, redeems him in ways no spell ever could. Years later, when we see Draco on platform 9 3/4 with his own son, he is no longer the boy who strutted through Hogwarts in black robes. He is a man changed by war, humbled by experience. He watches his child board the train, not with the ambition of a Malfoy, but with the protectiveness of a father who once stood at the edge of darkness and chose to step back. That is why Draco Malfoy did not become a killer, not because he was too weak, but because, when it mattered most, he was strong enough to resist. Number 23. Why Voldemort's wand failed him. Deathly Hallows. The final battle between Harry Potter and Lord Voldemort in the Great Hall of Hogwarts did not begin with fire, nor end in thunder. It was not a duel of spectacle, but of ownership, of loyalty, of deeper laws that even the Dark Lord failed to grasp. The films, with their swirling capes and cinematic flair, stripped away the most crucial mechanism behind Voldemort's downfall. It wasn't courage that won the day, nor friendship alone, nor even skill. It was a quiet transfer of allegiance, one that had begun long before Voldemort cast the final curse. The Elder Wand, one of the 3 Deathly Hallows, was never truly Voldemort's. It lay in his hand like a trophy, but refused his commands like a prisoner in revolt. Its loyalty lay elsewhere, a detail buried not in flash and fire, but in the logic of wand law, a deep-rooted principle of magical allegiance. The wand, oldest of all, did not serve the one who possessed it through theft or murder, but the one who had earned its allegiance through disarmament. This was a truth Voldemort could not comprehend, and it was that failure that killed him. When Voldemort stole the wand from Dumbledore's tomb, he assumed that death had loosened the wand's hold on its master. He believed that in taking it from the dead, he would become its rightful owner. But wands are not swords to be wrenched from corpses. They are sentient in ways wizards barely understand. Dumbledore had not been defeated by Voldemort, but by Draco Malfoy, a 17-year-old boy who had, in fear and hesitation, disarmed the greatest wizard of the age atop the astronomy tower. That single act, Draco Malfoy wresting Dumbledore's wand from his hand, was not forgotten by the Elder Wand, for it is disarming, not killing, that determines wand allegiance. As Dumbledore himself explained in The Tales of Beedle the Bard, wands are more loyal than any friend and more changeable than any lover. The wand's loyalty passed, not with death, but with defeat. Draco, however briefly, became master of the Elder Wand, even though he never held it. And then came the moment of transfer, subtle and silent. Harry Potter, inside Malfoy Manor, cornered Draco, wand in hand. In a moment of tension and fury, Harry cast a disarming charm that ripped Draco's wand from his grasp. It wasn't the Elder Wand, but that didn't matter. Magic is not about appearances. It is about intention, force, and recognition. By defeating Draco, Harry unwittingly took ownership not only of the Hawthorn Wand, but of the Elder Wand's loyalty as well. The wand sensed its master's new master. This sequence of inheritance is crystal clear in Deathly Hallows. As Harry tells Voldemort in the Great Hall, "I got there first. I overpowered Draco weeks ago. I took this wand from him." The wand in question was not the Elder Wand, but, in wand lore, the nature of the duel is what matters. The Elder Wand had moved its loyalty to Harry not because he held it, but because he had earned it. It followed him, invisibly, into the final confrontation. Voldemort, in contrast, tried to bend the wand to his will through murder and brute force. He had killed Snape, mistakenly believing that Snape, who had killed Dumbledore, had gained the wand's loyalty. It was a tragic error, born of a misreading of wand lore. Snape had not defeated Dumbledore, he had only carried out a mercy killing, one agreed upon beforehand. The wand had never been Snape's, and so Voldemort's murder of him meant nothing to the Elder Wand. It is here that the magic of Rowling's world reveals its deep inner coherence. It is not the wand that chooses the master, but the wand that recognizes the master through defeat, through power, through connection. The Elder Wand's betrayal of Voldemort was not sudden, it was inevitable. From the moment Harry disarmed Draco, the wand began its silent rebellion, waiting for the moment when it would be forced to make a choice. The final battle was that moment. Voldemort raised the Elder Wand, but it hesitated. In the film we see it blast backwards, his own curse ricocheting with destructive beauty. But in the book the moment is simpler, cleaner, and more poignant. Voldemort screams the killing curse, Avada Kedavra, and Harry, using Draco's old wand, responds with Expelliarmus. The green light meets the red. There is a burst of sound, and then Voldemort falls. The Elder Wand sails through the air and lands with perfect grace in Harry's hand, as if it had been waiting. Rowling writes, Voldemort was dead, killed by his own rebounding curse, and Harry stood with two wands in his hand, the Elder Wand, which had returned to him, and the Holy Wand that had defended him. The symbolism is clear. The world's most powerful wand had acknowledged its true master, not the man who stole it from a grave, but the boy who had earned it with a single spell. It is important to note that Harry never wanted the Elder Wand. He never sought power. That, too, may have played a role. Magic in Rowling's universe is shaped by intention. Voldemort craved mastery over death and magic itself. Harry only wanted to protect. This contrast is at the heart of why the wand refused Voldemort's command. It sensed the darkness in him, the arrogance, the disregard for the ancient rules that govern magic. This isn't the first time wand loyalty had intervened on Harry's behalf. In Goblet of Fire, when Voldemort and Harry's wands connected, Priori Incantatem forced a reversal of spells. The wands shared the same core, phoenix feather from the same bird, but underlying that connection was a truth of magical allegiance. Even then, Harry's wand was defending him fiercely, resisting Voldemort not because of wood or core, but because of allegiance. In Deathly Hallows, when Harry tries to use the Elder Wand, it responds instantly. It heals his broken Holy Wand, something no ordinary wand could do. This is the wand's final testimony. Not only does it obey Harry, it yearns to serve him. It reveals its full strength only in his hands. And yet, Harry chooses to return it to Dumbledore's tomb, a gesture of humility that separates him from every dark wizard before him. The power of this moment is lost in the film, replaced with a dramatic dive and a snapping wand. But in the book, it is richer. The Elder Wand is not broken, it is respected, buried again with the only man who ever truly mastered it and sought to keep it from the world. As long as Harry dies undefeated, its loyalty ends with him. It is an end not of violence, but of wisdom. The films missed the elegance of this logic. They turned the ending into a battle of visuals, stripping it of the narrative precision that Rowling so carefully constructed. The question of why Harry's simple spell defeated Voldemort's final curse is never explained. Yet in the book, it is the most critical point. Voldemort died not because he was outdueled, but because he misunderstood the wand in his hand. In that moment, Harry does not kill. He deflects. He uses Expelliarmus, not Avada Kedavra. The same spell he used against Draco, the same spell he favored throughout his journey, that too mattered. Magic reflects character. Harry never wanted to kill, even in war. His victories were not about domination, but protection. The wand responded to that consistency, that integrity. It chose Harry not for power, but for restraint. Draco, too, was an unwitting piece in this logic. He never held the Elder Wand, never even knew he'd won its allegiance. But the rules of wand law are not based on awareness, they are based on action. When he disarmed Dumbledore, he triggered a shift that only Harry completed. Neither boy understood the consequences, but the wand did. There is a quiet justice in Voldemort's death, not justice through revenge or fury, but through understanding. The boy he tried to kill as a baby grew into a wizard who obeyed the rules of magic more faithfully than Voldemort ever could. That is the ultimate irony. The wand Voldemort believed would make him invincible was never his. It was only waiting for the right master to call it home. Thus Voldemort fell to a spell not of death, but of disarmament, a spell of refusal, of rejection. The Elder Wand, ancient and mighty, chose to end a line of tyranny with a flicker of red light and a whisper of loyalty. And Harry Potter, standing amid the rubble of the Great Hall, understood at last what true power meant, not control, not domination, but the ability to let go. Number 24, Dudley's redemption, Deathly Hallows. For years, Dudley Dursley was the very embodiment of cruelty without consequence, a boy with too many toys and too little empathy, who measured affection in the form of sweets and tantrums. He bullied without guilt and mocked without restraint. He was the favourite of Petunia, the pride of Vernon, and the bane of Harry's early existence. But behind the sneers and the pig's tail, there existed a boy shaped, perhaps poisoned, by the fear and ignorance of the adults around him. A boy who, in the final hour, revealed that even a Dursley could change. In Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, we meet Dudley as a grotesque exaggeration of a spoiled child. On his birthday, he throws a fit because he receives only 37 presents instead of 38. His whining is theatrical, his demands never-ending, and his fists quick to land blows on a boy smaller, quieter, and far more alone. When Vernon boards up the letterbox to prevent Harry from receiving his Hogwarts letter, Dudley jumps on the chaos like a hungry animal, gleefully complicit in Harry's oppression. He is not just a background bully, he is the symbol of everything Harry lacks: love, comfort, and recognition. Yet even in those early books, J.K. Rowling plants the seeds of something more complicated. Dudley is not clever, he is not brave, but he is human, and like many children, he is a reflection of his environment. Vernon taught him fear, Petunia taught him favoritism. Both parents taught him that Harry was strange, dangerous, and shameful. That sort of education shapes the soul, and Dudley absorbed every lesson. Throughout the series, Dudley's torment continues with increasing cruelty. In the Order of the Phoenix, we see him as a teenager, still brutish, still aggressive, now training as a boxer, using his physical power to dominate. But something changes on that walk home in the alley. The moment a Dementor attacks him, something shifts in Dudley's worldview. He experiences, perhaps for the first time, a moment of absolute helplessness. He cannot punch his way out. He cannot run. And Harry, the boy he despised, is the one who saves him. It's a turning point written not in sweeping declarations, but in silences. After the attack, Dudley doesn't speak a word. He stares at the floor. He doesn't accuse Harry. He doesn't laugh. He doesn't boast. When Mrs. Figg appears and yells at him, he doesn't retaliate. Vernon blusters, Petunia panics, but Dudley is quiet. That silence is telling. It is the first crack in his manufactured identity. The moment is subtle, and many readers might have missed it. But Rowling rarely writes silence without meaning. In that quietude, Dudley is processing something he cannot explain. He has felt what Harry has lived with for years: terror, powerlessness, and the brush of death. And it was Harry, in the freak, as Vernon called him, who saved him from it. The seed of change is planted. Fast forward to Deathly Hallows, and the transformation becomes undeniable. The wizarding world is on the brink of war. The ministry is crumbling. Voldemort's power grows unchecked. Harry must leave the Dursleys' house to protect them. And so in one final scene, the family, that spent 11 years pretending he didn't matter, must say goodbye. It is here, at this strange threshold between safety and exile, that Dudley Dursley finally reveals his humanity. In the chapter titled The Dursleys Departing, Rowling offers us a moment that never made it into the films. A moment that, had it been included, would have rewritten the audience's understanding of Dudley's arc. As the Order of the Phoenix prepares to escort the Dursleys to safety, Harry walks down the drive with them, expecting nothing, no words, no gestures, certainly no thanks, but Dudley stops. He doesn't move. He hesitates. He turns to Harry. The narration tells us that Dudley is frowning at his trainers as though he had never seen anything quite like them and was contemplating them as some fascinating new form of life. It's a classic Rowling touch, humor laced with emotional truth. Dudley is not eloquent, he never has been, but then, in a few broken words, he redefines their relationship. "I don't think you're a waste of space," he says. Harry is stunned. He doesn't know what to do with this gift, because that's what it is, a gift, a confession, a peace offering wrapped in awkward sincerity. For years, Dudley mocked Harry as inferior, abnormal, and disposable, and now, just before they part forever, he says the opposite. It is not an apology, not exactly, but in the world of the Dursleys, where feelings are unwelcome and honesty dangerous, it is something far more rare, acceptance. That quote, "I don't think you're a waste of space," carries the weight of a lifetime. It is the undoing of every insult, every shove, every smirk. It is Dudley saying, "I was wrong," and it is Harry who understands this. He doesn't mock him or gloat. He simply accepts the gesture, stunned and grateful. Rowling then gives us another surprising detail. Dudley shakes Harry's hand, not out of obligation, not because someone tells him to, but because he wants to. It's a small gesture in the grand scheme of wizarding wars and Horcrux hunts, but emotionally it is enormous. It is the moment Dudley chooses kindness. Why did the films omit this scene? Perhaps they felt it was unnecessary. Perhaps they thought audiences wouldn't care. But they were wrong, because in this scene, Rowling resolves a thread that had run quietly through every book. The story of the boy who had everything, learning to feel something for the boy who had nothing. There is a tenderness in Dudley's change that feels deeply earned. He doesn't become a hero. He doesn't start casting spells or fighting Death Eaters. His journey is smaller, quieter, and therefore more believable. He doesn't reject his parents, but he gently separates from their worldview. He doesn't suddenly love Harry, but he respects him. That respect, after so much hatred, means everything. The change in Dudley is not one of sudden reversal, but slow evolution. Rowling hints that he has been thinking, watching, perhaps even regretting, that after the Dementor attack, after seeing Harry risk himself again and again, Dudley began to wonder if he had misunderstood the boy under the stairs. Perhaps he even began to question the people who had told him who Harry was in the first place. Petunia and Vernon are incapable of this evolution. Petunia, trembling and pale, cannot meet Harry's eyes. Vernon remains fixed in his ignorance. But Dudley breaks the pattern. He sees Harry not as a rival, but as a person, and in doing so he breaks free from the emotional inheritance of his family. Rowling never makes Dudley a saint. He remains awkward, limited, and very much a product of his upbringing, but that's what makes his transformation so powerful. He doesn't become someone new, he becomes someone better. A boy who once kicked and sneered becomes a man who reaches out his hand. And that is real change. Even more moving is the realization that this gesture doesn't just change Harry's view of Dudley, it changes ours. Readers who had written him off as a one-dimensional brute must now reckon with the fact that even Dudley Dursley, after years of cruelty, is capable of redemption. That people, even ones shaped by fear and arrogance, can choose to be different. And perhaps that was always Rowling's point. That change is not about grand declarations but small decisions. That forgiveness is not always spoken but felt. That family is not always love but sometimes, in the smallest way, it tries to be. It's worth noting that Rowling wrote a deleted scene, shared later in interviews, in which Dudley sends Harry a Christmas card. She imagined that after the events of the books the cousins were never close, but maintained a distant, polite relationship. That card, fictional or not, speaks volumes. It suggests that the Dudley we met in Sorcerer's Stone would not recognize the Dudley we leave in Deathly Hallows, and maybe that's the miracle. Because in the world of Harry Potter, not all magic is cast with wands. Sometimes the most powerful transformation is a boy whispering that you are not what the world told him you were, that you are not worthless, that you are not alone. Sometimes the real spell is acceptance. So when Dudley Dursley steps into that car, leaving Privet Drive behind, he leaves behind more than bricks and curtains. He leaves behind a legacy of cruelty, and in its place he plants something fragile and beautiful, the beginning of understanding. And Harry, in return, watches him go, not with hatred, not even indifference, but with something closer to peace. Number 25, Regulus Black's Sacrifice, Half-Blood, Prince and Deathly Hallows. In the world of wizarding valor and betrayal, few stories pierce the heart quite like that of Regulus Arcturus Black. His name, barely whispered throughout the pages of the Harry Potter series, echoes not with the grandeur of heroism, but with the solemnity of sacrifice. When Harry Potter discovers the locket in the Half-Blood Prince, it bears the initials R.A.B., a mysterious signature that leads to one of the saga's most tragic, yet heroic tales. It is only later, in the Deathly Hallows, that the truth is unveiled. Regulus, once a Death Eater and loyal follower of Voldemort, turned against the Dark Lord, not out of rebellion, but from the bitter taste of disillusionment and a desperate need for redemption. Regulus was born into the ancient and noble House of Black, a family drenched in pure blood pride and dark traditions. His older brother Sirius rejected those beliefs, running from home to join the light. Regulus, in contrast, embraced the family legacy, perhaps hoping to win the approval of his cold, demanding parents. At 16, he joined the Death Eaters, marked by the Dark Lord himself. But where Sirius was openly defiant, Regulus was a boy shaped by duty, silent expectations, and a yearning for significance in a world that prized blood over character. For most of his life, Regulus lived in the shadow of others, his family's expectations, Sirius's rebellion, Voldemort's power. But this obscurity would one day cloak a dangerous secret. As a Death Eater, Regulus was close enough to Voldemort to see the rot beneath the grandeur. The turning point came with a creature most would have ignored. Kreacher, the Black family's aging house elf. Voldemort had used Kreacher to test one of his Horcrux protections, abandoning the elf in a cave of horrors. But Kreacher survived. He returned to his master, not Voldemort but Regulus, and Regulus listened. The cruelty Voldemort inflicted on Kreacher opened Regulus's eyes. If the Dark Lord was willing to sacrifice a loyal servant, what did that say of his values? It was through this act, not a grand duel or whispered prophecy, Regulus began to understand the depth of Voldemort's darkness. He questioned. He learned. He discovered the secret Voldemort had hidden, a piece of soul encased in a locket, protected in a remote cave by cruel enchantments. A Horcrux. Regulus, young but no fool, recognized the implications. To create a Horcrux, one must commit murder. To create many, one must commit atrocities. Voldemort had shattered his soul not once, but many times. What followed was an act of immense courage. Regulus devised a plan. He commanded Kreacher to take him to the cave to show him the path Voldemort had taken. He carried a fake locket, intending to steal the true Horcrux and replace it with the counterfeit. He knew the cave was deadly. He knew the potion guarding the locket caused unbearable torment. He drank it anyway, not for glory, not for recognition, but because it was the right thing to do and because no one else would. Kreacher had to watch as Master Regulus drank the potion. Master Regulus was in pain. He was screaming, he wanted water, and Kreacher couldn't help him. The Deathly Hallows, Chapter 10. This line, spoken by Kreacher, chills the spine. It is one of the rare, raw moments when the true horror of Voldemort's cruelty and the weight of Regulus's decision is laid bare. Regulus had no backup, no allies. He faced death alone. And in those final moments, knowing that his actions might save the world or be forgotten entirely, he fulfilled his mission. He ordered Kreacher to take the real locket and destroy it, and then he succumbed to the Inferi. Regulus was 18 years old. His sacrifice was not romanticized. It was not commemorated in the Hall of Prophecies or sung in the Great Hall. No Order of Merlin, no funeral, no portrait at Hogwarts. His family never spoke of it. His brother never knew the truth until after his death. and the wizarding world remained ignorant of the boy who tricked the Dark Lord and died trying to undo the evil he once served. The tragedy of Regulus Black is not just in how he died, but in how little the world valued it. His journey, from blind loyalty to awakening, from Death Eater to Redeemer, remains one of the most powerful redemptions in the saga. It did not unfold in broad daylight or in front of an audience. It was quiet, it was lonely, and it was brave. Regulus's name was never linked with resistance. Yet he did what few dared. He turned against Voldemort from within and acted with no promise of salvation. The locket he stole, Slytherin's locket, that became one of the most crucial pieces in Voldemort's downfall. Without Regulus, Harry would have never found it. Kreacher, driven by his master's final command and newfound respect for Harry, guided them. When Harry treated Kreacher with kindness, the elf remembered Regulus's sacrifice. Master Regulus died to bring it back, Kreacher said. That locket, once worn by Salazar Slytherin, poisoned Ron Weasley with doubt and jealousy. It was destroyed by Gryffindor's sword, ending a fragment of Voldemort's soul. But the first true blow to that locket was struck by a boy in the shadows, Regulus Black. In contrast to the public heroes of the Second Wizarding War, Dumbledore, Snape, Harry, Regulus's tale is almost mythic in its quiet tragedy. He chose to act not because he was promised redemption, but because his conscience demanded it. Unlike Snape, he did not need love to motivate him. Unlike Harry, he did not have friends. Unlike Dumbledore, he did not seek to correct past mistakes for legacy. Regulus simply saw horror and chose to oppose it. His story, hidden in whispers and initials, reflects the cruel irony of war, that those who perish in the shadows often burn the brightest, though no one sees the flame. Regulus, branded by the dark mark, was no longer a boy when he died. He was a man shaped by pain, honor, and guilt, and though the world forgot him, his actions rippled through time, saving lives he would never meet. There is an aching beauty in his anonymity. For all the legends that swirl around the boy who lived the half-blood prince, the headmaster's army, Regulus remains the unsung, and yet he is perhaps the most human of them all. He made one fatal choice, to join Voldemort, and then spent the rest of his life trying to undo it. That complexity, that inner conflict makes his character resonate long after his name is read in the footnotes. In the Deathly Hallows, Harry walks through the ruins of Grimmauld Place where Regulus once lived. The house is haunted by portraits and pure-blood relics, but it is Kreacher who carries Regulus's memory like a torch. The once disdainful elf transforms after Harry acknowledges his former master. It is one of the few moments where the books show that respect, even delayed, can redeem history. Kreacher fights for Harry because of Regulus, because of what he did. That is the unseen bridge between generations. Perhaps that is the true legacy of Regulus Arcturus Black. Not the locket, not the cave, but the idea that even those born into darkness can choose light, and that doing so may cost everything. Regulus did not live to see Voldemort fall. He did not witness Sirius's escape from Azkaban or Harry's triumph, but in some distant way he shaped all of it. There is something profoundly tragic in imagining Regulus drowning in the cave, alone, screaming in the dark. A boy who once believed in the purity of bloodlines, dying for the hope that a piece of evil could be undone. His death was not just a loss. It was a confession, a plea for the world to do better. It is a reminder that heroism is not always about survival or recognition. Sometimes it is about falling so that others may rise. Regulus's name does not echo in Hogwarts halls. It is not carved into any memorial, but within the pages of the Deathly Hallows and in the heart of Kreacher, his legacy endures. J.K. Rowling, through sparse but poignant details, paints the portrait of a forgotten warrior. He was the first to find out, Dumbledore admits. But it is not Dumbledore who leads Harry to that truth. It is the elf, the locket, the initials R.A.B., When Harry, Ron, and Hermione sit with the locket and piece together its origins, it becomes clear Regulus's sacrifice was the first fracture in Voldemort's invincibility. The war did not start with a prophecy or a lightning bolt. It began in the quiet rebellion of a boy who realized he had followed a monster. And in that moment he chose to become more than a follower. If there is one lesson to draw from Regulus Black, it is this: that redemption is always possible, that even in the shadow of evil the heart can awaken, that acts of courage need not be seen to change the world. The boy who walked into the cave never returned. But he did not vanish. He became a whisper in history, a locket in a shell, a name remembered by a house elf. And through him the light began to rise. Number 26, Why Harry Gave Up the Elder Wand, Deathly Hallows. In the ruins of Hogwarts, dust still settling and the smoke of battle rising, Harry Potter stood, bloodied but alive, in the echoing silence that followed the end of Voldemort. Around him lay the shattered remains of the war, bodies, broken walls, wounded hearts, and in his hand, impossibly, he now held the Elder Wand, the most powerful wand in existence, a wand that had passed through the hands of murderers, duelists, and legends, a wand that had been at the center of death and betrayal for centuries. And yet, for Harry, it was not a prize, it was a burden. The Elder Wand had once belonged to Antioch Peverell, the first of 3 brothers who, according to the legend, met death himself. Antioch was arrogant and power-hungry, and for that he was murdered in his sleep by someone who coveted the wand. That legacy clung to the Elder Wand like a curse, passed from hand to hand, each new owner marked by violence. Gellert Grindelwald stole it. Albus Dumbledore won it in a duel. Draco Malfoy unknowingly disarmed Dumbledore and became its new master. And then Harry, in a moment of fate, wrested the wand's allegiance when he took Draco's wand at Malfoy Manor. He hadn't even realized it then. The wand had chosen him. But Harry wanted no part of it. The films reduced this immense moment to a few seconds. In the movie adaptation of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Part 2, Harry snaps the wand in half and tosses it into a ravine. No words, no ceremony. A gesture meant to signal renunciation, perhaps, but stripped of emotional weight. Viewers unfamiliar with the book are left puzzled. Why destroy the greatest magical tool ever created? Why reject such unparalleled power? But the book tells a different story, one rich with purpose and maturity. J.K. Rowling carefully constructed this moment as the final turning point in Harry's personal journey. After returning from death itself, after walking willingly into the forest to die, Harry was reborn, not just as a victor, but as a man who had learned the cost of power. The Elder Wand represented everything he had chosen not to become. And so, when the battle ended, Harry went to Dumbledore's tomb and returned the wand to its former owner. It was not broken, not discarded, but respectfully put to rest. Harry tells Ron and Hermione of his intention. I'm putting the Elder Wand back where it came from. It can stay there. If I die a natural death, its power will be broken, won't it? The wand's power will be ended. But this is not a hasty decision. It's an act of foresight, of understanding the danger that power invites. The wand's history speaks for itself. Grindelwald's tyranny, Dumbledore's regret, and Voldemort's obsession all stemmed from their relationship to the Elder Wand. It would have been easy, seductively easy, for Harry to keep the wand. To repair his own broken wand with it, which he does temporarily, using its unmatched magic. To use it as a safeguard, or to impose his own version of order upon the world. After all, he had been through so much. He had suffered, fought, bled, and lost. If anyone deserved the power to protect the peace, it was him. And yet that is precisely why he refused it. Harry's rejection of the wand is the culmination of a theme that runs through the entire series, the idea that true strength lies in restraint. From the beginning, he is contrasted with Tom Riddle. Both are orphans, both possess remarkable magical abilities, both are Parselmouths, and both are singled out by prophecy. But where Voldemort sought domination, Harry sought connection. Where Voldemort feared death, Harry accepted it, and where Voldemort craved power, Harry relinquished it. Dumbledore himself had fallen prey to the temptation of power. His friendship with Grindelwald, born of shared dreams and ideals, nearly destroyed him. "I was a fool," Dumbledore admits to Harry in King's Cross. "I was such a fool. I cared more for your glory than for you." Dumbledore's greatest regret was his belief that he could be trusted with power, and his eventual realization that no one should be. It is in that conversation with Dumbledore, in the in-between space of life and death, that Harry begins to understand. He asks Dumbledore if returning the wand to its tomb will be enough. Dumbledore, for once, does not answer with certainty, but his final advice is telling: "Do not pity the dead, Harry. Pity the living, and above all, those who live without love." The Elder Wand, for all its might, has never been a symbol of love. It is a symbol of fear, conquest, and pride. Throughout the books, wands are an extension of the wizard's identity. They choose their owners. They respond to loyalty, to intention, to the wizard's soul. Ollivander notes that the Elder Wand is different. It is a wand that only takes to strength. But what kind of strength? Harry's strength is not in domination, but in mercy, not in spells, but in sacrifice. And that is why the wand obeys him, even though he does not seek its loyalty. Consider the scene in the Deathly Hallows when Harry uses the Elder Wand to repair his own Holly and Phoenix feather wand, the one that chose him in Ollivander's shop 7 years earlier. He took his own wand and repaired it with the Elder Wand. He knew it had worked, even before he had finished performing the charm. This moment is vital. The Elder Wand does what Harry asks of it, not out of fear, but respect. It is the only time he uses it, and then he lets it go. Harry understands that power, even when wielded with good intentions, is a dangerous thing. The wizarding world had just emerged from the shadow of Voldemort. Another wielder of the Elder Wand, no matter how benevolent, would be watched, feared, and eventually challenged. Wars begin over such objects. Peace, if it is to last, must be built not on fear of power, but on trust. Harry chooses to be part of that peace.